Let me double check my settings.
I guess I gotta get there.
Thank you. I did that earlier. Yes.
Assuming life insurance.
I'm proud of myself. I came in here and did this ahead of time and made sure that I understood what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And so it is showing that we're live streaming, so I don't know if somebody wants to check this. And I've started the audio, so you can start.
You got it. All right.
Before I can hear where we're back from here.
Thanks. Okay. We're going to call the city council meeting to order at 5:30. We'll start with a roll call.
Sheena Martinez, District 1.
Paul Carey for District 2.
Bill King, District 3.
David Mers Jr. for District 4. Herb Dyer, District 5.
And Darren Schroeder, Mayor. We're all in attendance. If you will, please stand with me for the pledge of allegiance and main. First to the American flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
One state, God,
one and indivisible.
And for the invocation, we have Terry Ballard.
Amen. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come and gather here this evening. And just as the days of old, when they gathered at the city gates of Jerusalem, Lord, to discuss the issues of the community and issues of business and family, Father, so we are here to do the same. And so, Father, we just pray that you would bless us, pray that you would bring peace to this meeting, Father. Your kingdom, we glorify your kingdom first and foremost. Father, we give you honor and glory in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
I don't know that there's anything we can do at this point.
It looks clear here. So.
All right, next item is citizens' comments. If anybody would like to speak for citizens' comments, please come state your name and your address. Love to hear from you.
Kyle McVeigh, 307 Madrid, Castroville. And no, I'm not here for the animal shelter. My term is up for HLC, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to the end of the meeting tonight. I'll have a rather long one. But anyway, just to give you a little background that you might ask later, I've restored 2 old Alsatian houses, have been part of the community for over 40 years, truly believe in historic preservation, and value the fact that I'm on a committee that I can do something about it. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Would anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments? All right, we do have a couple that we wanted to read, a couple of people that had asked us.
I was going to say for the public hearing.
Oh, for the public hearing? Okay, perfect. All right. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have minutes for August 27th, 2024, regular called meeting. We have adopt a resolution adopting an investment policy, and then authorize city natural gas system annual DIMP improvements. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like to pull item B from the consent agenda.
Okay.
And I also need to be recused for the minutes of August 27th. I was not present.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve items A and C on the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion
Abstention.
and 1 abstention on A. All right. Next item is mayor's report. I don't have a presentation.
B.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just moving right along. Thank you. On B.
I would like to recuse myself because I have a family interest in local financial institutions.
And that is the only thing?
That's it.
Okay, perfect. So then, from everybody else, do I have a motion to approve item B on the consent agenda?
So, second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And one abstention. Recusation. All right. Now, next item, Mayor's report. So we're going to talk really briefly about three things. The Founders Day that's coming up this weekend, National Night Out that's happening in October, and then the September 7th Service Project. I'm actually going to hit C first. This is just one item. I'm always really amazed when people offer their time, their service, their expertise, their investments of whatever they have to invest in this. And we had a church that came out. I want to make sure that I get this right. The San Antonio Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And they brought out on Saturday 187 volunteers.
It's actually a little over 220. We revised the number after their forms.
220, great. That was from Helen. Well, Helen let me know that brings our total number of volunteer hours with the 187, not including the additional, 30 people, to almost 10,000 hours, 9,751 and a half hours of volunteer at the regional park. And this is really great. When people are doing this, I love the fact that they're willing to take their time, their energy, and come out and serve the public, whether they are people who live here or people that live in the community around us. I think it's really awesome that people come in and do this kind of thing for the betterment of everybody. So, Scott, was there anything else that I had missed for that? Because I wasn't actually there for the actual event.
They filled I'll just say they filled a 40-yard dumpster. So one of the things that this group wanted to do is be able to help local families, and our code compliance officer reached out to several of the families that had been dealing with code compliance issues that were unable to take care of their yard for one reason or another. And during that, unfortunately, we actually didn't get to all of the properties. There were two that they ran out of time to actually help out with. So we'll have to come back and do those on another day. But of the remaining properties, I think it was 11 in all. So 9 of them, they removed 40 yards worth of trash and debris. And that does not count the brush. So we have brush piles in a couple places around the city, or at those 9 properties where brush was cut and removed, and the city staff will come by and chip that later. So that was kind of the partnership that the city worked out with this volunteer group, is that if they would remove the brush, then we would come behind and pick it up.
That's amazing.
I gotta say, if you drive around Regional Park now, there's a bunch of piles, so it shows you the effort that went.
You notice
into this
how
there.
many yards of that was removed? But they removed a lot of dead wood and cut back trees all along that hill. So we'll be
Yeah,
busy
a
for
lot.
several weeks chipping wood.
You got more.
Yep.
All right. So the thing that's coming up this weekend, Founders Day, that will start at, I have this right, it's 4:00 for the ceremony at September Square. And then we'll move over. You've probably seen the advertisements for the celebration at the regional park. We'll continue. The Daughters of the Republic of Texas have been doing this ceremony every year for as long as I can remember. They've done a really good job on doing the actual ceremony itself. The Sons of the Republic of Texas are leaning in this year. This will be their first anniversary. We'll actually be doing a proclamation congratulating them and creating a Sons of the Republic of Texas day for them. We've talked to the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, and it's just a really good combination of folks to help us out with that celebration. We wanted to keep it at September Square because that's where it's been happening all of this time, and we were trying to figure out the best place to have. We wanted to have something that celebrated not just the Alsatian cultures, but all of the cultures that have added into creating the city and making it into what it is today. So we have representatives of the indigenous, the Lipan Apaches, the Hispanic cultures, Mexican and Spanish. We have people representing the Belgian communities, German. I don't know that I think we have some German food, but that's as far as we got with that one. And of course, we'll have the Alsatian dancers. We'll have some folks out showing about traditional dress. Robert Wannett is going to give an example of a lot of tools and implements that people would use. So we've got a bunch of things that are going on. And then we'll finish the whole thing up with all of the different the events that people are having. We'll finish it up with music from Western Ritz if we still have folks around. So this is the first time that we've incorporated a larger celebration. So I would ask everybody, share the word. We'd love to get people out for it. It's going to be a great time. We've got a number of vendors. We've got some great sponsors who are making this happen. So please spread the word and come on down and celebrate the founding of our city. This is the 180th anniversary. This is something that we're planning on doing every year in terms of an actual celebration for Founders Day. I think that it's something that is worth celebrating, and we'll keep on making it better every year. And then the next item is National Night Out. This is on October 1st at the airport. Chief Kohler and his team have been really working hard on putting this together. This is a time for the community to come out and meet our first responders. So we'll have people from the sheriff's department, people from our own officers that are there. I believe that we have one very brave one that's going to be coming out of an airplane. So that'll be exciting. I'm not doing it this year. Did it once. So it'll be a really good time. We'd love to have you out there. We decided to do it. In years past, we've done them kind of spread out through the different communities, and we looked at it this year and decided it was working out really well to bring a lot more of the community together so that we can meet more of the first responders. It gives you a chance to meet all of them instead of having them kind of spread throughout. So we just wanted to have that time for you to be able to meet them, see what they're doing. We'll have some other things for kids to do and other events to keep everybody interested in what's going on and having a good time. We'll have some food out there, and we'll have the Dream Flights. We're going to have a couple of their planes out for display. We haven't talked them into giving rides this year, but that'll happen in our annual event later on. So it'll be a great time. Love to have you. All right. The next is our board liaison reports. We'll start with the Airport Advisory Board on August 5th. Council Martinez.
We had the town hall meeting, so I did not attend, and I didn't make it to last night's meeting. I was ill.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm better today.
I'm glad. Next item is Historic Landmark Commission on August 20th. Councilman King.
There were 3 properties that came up, and all 3 were approved. One was an electrical charging station, and one of them, of course, was the Living History Center, and then one of them was putting a porch cover on a existing porch on a house, which was not. And it should mention some of these are not traditional Alsatian houses, but they're within the historic district, so that's moving forward very calmly and sensibly as we move down.
Good. Glad to hear that. Next item is Library Advisory Board on August 8th. Councilman Dyer.
I don't have any, I didn't go to the meeting. I think it was canceled, wasn't it?
No, there was a brief meeting. I want to say it updated. I want to say I updated council at the last council meeting, but yeah, we met Beth Farley, the new library director, and planned her welcome, and we had that welcome event the following weekend, I believe. So, but that's all I can recall from the meeting because it's been a minute. I apologize.
And at the welcome event, they were showing off. They've made a lot of progress in that library. I love how they've turned the whole front section that they used to use for programming. I can't believe how much they have cleaned that up. It was definitely a utilitarian space before. Now they've cleared it all up, and this is where they've moved all of the family histories, all of the books that have been donated from our friends in Alsace. These are different books about the history of Castroville, so it's very specifically a Castroville room. And we had this challenge that when it was out in the general public, we had potential to lose some of these things that are absolutely irreplaceable. We have worked on digitizing them, but there was that challenge. The other end of that is when you put them back in the back and they're totally protected and nobody can check them out and steal them, you also can't see them. And so they found a nice way to be able to have people get in there and do some real family research and learn more about the community and the history and some really, really neat stuff. So I love the way that they put that together. It's
If you've only been to the library, last week, then you have to go again this week, because over the weekend there were a number of changes made where she's reorganized where things are, the computers, the shelving, the tables and chairs. Everything in the library has been moved around. It's a little bit like going to the store and you're trying to find that thing that's always in that one place and they've moved it. She's doing a lot of that, and we're very, very proud to have Beth. I think she offers a lot of years of experience and wisdom to our library. It's going to be a great addition to the city. So.
great. Thank you. Next item is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, August 21st. Councilman Merce.
At this meeting, the board discussed grant applications and possibly some of them helping find and fill out grant applications. They discussed the results of this year's Parks Improvement Survey, and they agreed that they had enough results, so they were going to close it. They're going to use those results to update their list of project priorities. Hopefully by the time we get to the CIP, they'll have that for us. And then they finalized their recommended rules changes. Those were in our packets last time in Jonah's report, but I believe they'll also be coming to council soon.
That's great. They're using the master plan the way that it's designed to be made or designed to be worked, and that is you come up with it and you modify it every year to keep it fresh and updated and actionable. That's great. Planning and Zoning Commission, there was no meeting in August. There was also no Economic Development Corporation Board meeting in July, so nothing there. Next item is consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance amending the drought contingency plan and establishing a drought surcharge for overusage and additional reduction requirements during stage 5. For this we have
Kathy Adams.
we have Kathy Adams, Public Works Assistant.
Kathy Adams, Atascosa, Bear County. So, are we going to put the presentation? Which one?
Would that be helpful?
They have one in the packet, but let me pull it up.
Okay.
Zeros get cut for this.
And while she's bringing that up, just an introduction for people who wonder why we're looking at this. What we noticed is, as we've been studying, especially we're in the worst drought in 70 years, and the second worst in recorded history with the Edwards Aquifer. So we are being very diligent about looking at usage, the amount of water rights that we have, and what's been very interesting. In the times that people are supposed to be conserving, they're actually using a lot more. They're trying to save their lawns, trying to save their plants, but it's the reverse effect of what we need to accomplish to be good stewards of the water. And so she's bringing this for us to take a look at how do we deal with it.
And also we wanted to add some rules for stage 5. In the previous version, there was nothing in stage 5. It was just reserved for future. And 3 different times this year, we've been this close to going to stage 5. Fortunately, we haven't been into stage 5 yet. But the key changes we are proposing are to add a drought surcharge when we go into stages 3, 4, and 5. The threshold for those surcharges would be for a residential class is when it goes above 20,000 gallons. For stages 4 and 5 when it's 12,000 gallons. For commercial, 80,000 for stage 3, and stage 4 and 5 would be 40,000.
And
Then-
those amounts are based on a percentage reduction, correct?
Each stage has its own percentage that we're required. Edwards Aquifer doesn't tell us how to do it. They just tell us you have to reduce your usage by this percent. And so in looking at where we were and when we have the most usage that would be beneficial for this surcharge is in these stages. Stage 1 and 2 are minimal reductions, and we tend to be in those periods where people aren't using as much water. I don't know why stage 3, 4, and 5 happen to be in the summer months, and maybe it's caused by all the extra usage. I'm not sure. But we also looked at the percentage of usage where in each category, and we'll talk about that a little more later, to determine where we thought the threshold should be. Of course, if y'all want it to be different, then we can go there. But the other thing is in stage 5, and we looked at people or other municipalities with stage 5. I think we looked at 10 in all, and they all use pretty much the same as we're proposing, that no irrigation systems allowed in stage 5, only handheld watering, and on the customer's designated day based on their address. And that the use of water to wash impervious surfaces, parking lots, driveways, things like that, prohibited, and the use of water to clean buildings, prohibited unless needed for emergency fire protection. And then we removed the prohibition for new water services in stage 4. We think that by having them also adhere to our stages and following our same guidelines, it would be no, most all of them bring their water rights with them, so we think it's in the best interest of everyone that we remove that. Then the next thing is where we have our average residential usage is 5,000 gallons per property. The average residential usage is equal to or less, the top 5% is equal to or less than 40,000. So 5% of our users use 40,000 or more. 10% is still pretty high at 33,000. 58% of our customers use 9,000 or less. So, and it also, if you look on the slide, I showed the customer count through the past 5.5 years. So you get an idea of where, and this is pretty same percentages every year. It moves a little bit, instead of 40,000, it might be 42,000 or something like that, but they're pretty much the same every year. And in the commercial, the top 5% of users used 150,000 or more. And qualifying that includes our apartment buildings. It includes like the nursing homes and the car washes, places where you would think they use a lot of water. But for example, in the apartment buildings, they have like 4 units that split the water meter. So it's kind of hard to say that how to impose a surcharge there, because you'd have to divide it by the 4 units, and maybe this unit uses way less than this unit. So we probably would have to have those particular ones exempt from the surcharge. So we'll be looking at that closer and suggesting some places where we would exempt people. Also, anyone who has an excessive use in 1 month and is determined to be because of a leak, then we wouldn't propose the surcharge for that either. In the commercial usage, that top 5%, as I said, was 150,000. The top 10% uses 80,000. So that of the 233, that's only 25 of our customers that may fall into that range every month. And 61% of our commercial uses 9,000 or less also. So That seems to be a key place for the cutoff. Then on the next slide,
Going back one slide, does this
Okay.
mean that there's been a lot, I mean, in the green, is that total usage or what is that?
That's just 2024 year to date.
Okay, oh, that's just year to date.
yeah,
And that goes through,
Is this
it's
calendar?
through August. Through
This is calendar year?
no, it's through the billing from the 27th of a month through the 27th.
But when we look at the other years,
Uh-huh.
are they calendar, January to December?
When we put in no matter what, when we put in the month, like January 1 to January 31, it still pulls up the bills because it's based on your billing.
The number that's up here,
Yeah, January.
so like 2019,
Yeah.
on the
Oh,
right-hand side,
uh-huh.
it says 99,392,000.
That's the full year.
That's the full year.
Is it
Yeah.
a calendar year, January
Yes.
to December?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah,
what
so
you asked.
in 2024, we're only looking at January through
August.
August. Sounds good. I thought, man, we're doing good. And then, oh, okay.
yeah.
And 2020, of course, is an anomaly because that was COVID year and everyone was at home. So it's hard to use that. That's why we went on ahead and added one more year. Usually we go with the 5-year average and looking at things like that. But 2020 is hard to use because of that reason.
Now, are the car washes in the top 5% with 150,000,
And they're,
or which group?
yes. No, they're in the, 2 of them are in the top 5%. One falls into the top 10.
So how often do they bust that?
It's more in the summer than in other months. Not sure exactly why, but it is that for some reason the summer months tend to be a little higher on that. Our actual highest use months for this year for residential was July, and for residential July, and still July also.
For commercial?
The commercial in July was 5,475,000 gallons, and in residential was 9,162,000 gallons, just for that month.
So commercial is using about half as much as residential.
And we really don't have a lot of commercial businesses in the city yet. I mean, comparatively speaking, 233 to the 1,230 residents, that's not a lot. And most of our commercial are under the 9,000 threshold. So they're smaller businesses. They don't use as much. The car dealerships use a lot because they wash cars a lot. They have other reasons. They have irrigation systems. The commercial entities that use more do have irrigation systems.
With the exception of Walmart.
Walmart has an irrigation.
No, I'm talking about when
Oh.
they do their dunk tank and everything, let the water flow down into the parking lot where it grows.
Yeah.
That's another story.
But they've had their irrigation systems had leaks on it too, not just their retention
Out
pond.
in front of the store.
Yeah, they do have that. So now we're at the point where we're talking about what would happen if we use the surcharge. And we are suggesting, I see a mistake here, but it's $7.89 is what we're proposing. And I showed 2 examples, but I just, like I said, saw a mistake. It says $8.69 and it should be $7.89. I guess I pulled the one. We kept doing percentages and changing what we were going to suggest. But
It does show 789 on the
oh, that's
bottom.
this is the one before. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The one before before the August bill, this month's bill, this is what it would have been if for a customer who used 36,000 gallons. If we added the surcharge, they would pay an additional $126.24. And then on the next slide, it's if they use the same amount, the 36,000 in stage 4, their bill would go up by $189.36 as opposed to what it would be without the surcharge. And that's on a residential.
How do you handle, because we're jumping in and out of stage 3 and 4, how do you handle that when you're jumping out in between a billing date?
We talked about it, and I think what we would do is on the billing day, whatever stage we were in, that's probably what we would use. Or we could also look at how many weeks we're in one stage versus the other. Right now, we're teetering, leaving stage 4 and going back to stage 3. We're pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially after the rains last week. Yeah.
And then the next slide shows the same comparison with commercial. So the bill without a surcharge would be $773.57. If we were in stage 3, the 98,000 was the threshold we used. So they would be 18,000 over, and that's where they would the surcharge would go into effect and be $142.02. But in stage 4, it would be 58,000 gallons over, and the fee would be $457.62.
And I'm sorry, I'm sure, I remember the surcharge when you go into stage 4. Stage 3.
In stage 3, the threshold is the rate would stay the same. The rate would always be $7.89 if that's what y'all approve, but the threshold changes. So in stage 3, the threshold is 80,000. So whatever is over 80,000 would have the surcharge on it. And in stage 4, the threshold would be 40,000. So they would have more that they would have to pay the surcharge on in that instance. We think it would help people conserve more, use less by doing this, and a lot of other municipalities are adopting this procedure too. And then the last slide is we want everyone to conserve water. So, are there any other questions about how we got here?
I appreciate you putting this together. I'm just writing down the different things that we need to make sure that there's too many things that we can break by fixing one thing. We break 5 other things. So I think that the things that I have heard and the things that I am concerned with myself are who should be exempt. So doing a deeper dive into, I think it's specifically with the businesses, the residences, it's pretty straightforward because you use what you use. And you have the ability to reduce that. But like people like the apartments where they're on a shared bill or anything else, I think we need to do a deeper dive to understand who would be impacted by that.
The
and then
healthcare systems, they're required to wash their hands and everything, wash everything
Right.
constantly between patients and what have you. So water is a requirement.
Right.
For disinfection and everything like that.
and we certainly wouldn't want to impact like the retirement communities, the assisted living.
Yeah.
So I think that if we do a deeper dive into who falls within that category and take a look at, can they actually conserve? Do they have the ability to conserve? Are they doing anything that would allow them to do that? And look at potential exemptions with that. How do we deal with multiple stages in a month? We should figure that out. I think the way that Edwards Aquifer Authority does that is they do it days in the stage, and so I think that's the best way to do it. We need to figure out if we apply a surcharge, where does that get allocated? Does that get allocated directly to the utility system, to the water system? Does that get allocated to the water acquisition fund? Or what would we actually do with the money that's coming in from the surcharge? So you don't have to answer that now. I think that's something that we need to look at.
Okay.
And then something I think is really, really important is that we notify people. I honestly would like it if you would start putting together, if you don't already have the list of both residences and businesses that could be impacted by this because of their normal usage, not anomalous usage if they hit it every once in a while, but the ones that are regularly going over that. send them notification, let them know. I'd like to figure out exactly what that says, but say we are looking at water surcharges for, the reasons that we're looking at them. You may be impacted by this. I'd rather them know now ahead of time that we're looking at this so that they can start making modifications. They can start doing what they need to with their own usage, rather than being surprised with this huge bill and maybe missing it. So I'd like to make sure that we're talking about this very loudly.
We haven't talked about the surcharge to anyone, but we are actively talking to people about getting on the portal so that they can monitor their usage themselves and be aware of where their usage is going.
Well, let's just start compiling the list. We'll work on what
We have the
messages.
lists.
What's that?
We already have those lists.
Okay, perfect. So then we'll start working on what that verbiage needs to say once we get a little bit. I think after we get through some of these questions, we can slow roll this. We're getting out of the summer right now. There's nothing that is mandating us like implement this right away. So let's just do it right. Was there anything else that I missed that you feel like we still need to address?
Well, a couple of other questions or considerations. I'll add to Darren's considerations. You look at some businesses, for instance, healthcare, because the whole purpose of this is to keep the
Abuses.
95% of it is the irrigation. So if, for instance, let's say the healthcare, they have landscaping and they also have water inside, which they cannot conserve, really. So then would it be beneficial for them to go into a second meter for just the irrigation, and then this program only affects their irrigation? Because we're treating every commercial property the same. If it's a donut shop with one sink versus a healthcare that has 100 rooms. The other one is on the other side of it. You look at the new subdivision that's going to come in. So I'm assuming that the area sprinkler systems are going to be under the homeowners association or something, the developer or something, and that's going to use huge amounts of water. But realize it's also 600 homes. So in some respects, you would spread that over these 600 homes. So that's another consideration or thought that needs to be worked out somehow. But the most difficult thing is on commercial is to try to separate out the large users, the very large commercials, like someone the size of Walmart versus just a very little user. And I don't know the answers to all those, but those are things that need to be considered in this deal.
Great. So I put on your neighborhood common sprinklers. We don't have them, but we will. So let's anticipate that.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you had mentioned was refunds when people have leaks that are repaired, giving forgiveness on, because if it's an accident and they're not abusing it, then look at how do we refund that by policy instead of by exception.
We do have a policy for the leak forgiveness to the customers. If before we do the bill, we've identified it was a leak, because as we're doing the readings now, because we can get them very easily,
Yep.
we're getting the abnormals, and as many of them as we can, we're calling and talking to them. Some of them already knew they had a leak and fixed it, so they wouldn't even get that surcharge if they know already and they've
I think that is
already
really
fixed
good. That's the right way to act in a small community.
Advantage of real-time system.
Yeah, that is true, because we see that regularly. We'll have someone call and say, hey, for some reason, I think my usage is going up and I don't know why. And we'll look at it and pinpoint times of the day, or tell them, well, for a whole week, it's been all day long without stop. And they'll look and see if they can figure it out. The guys will go double check meters and things like that. So we try to keep it from impacting them before we bill them.
Great. Let's just make sure that we have that, the refund policy documented as a part of this exercise. That's really cool.
And for that forgiveness related water leak, do they actually have to hire a plumber, or can they repair it themselves and then show you what they did?
According to the state law, if the homeowner themselves repair it, so it'd have to be me out there or my husband repairing it. It couldn't be my brother-in-law or my uncle or someone like that. Otherwise, it has to be a licensed plumber.
Okay, but they can just show you evidence that they did repair it.
They just bring a picture of what they repaired or a copy of the receipt. Let's say they had to buy a new washer or whatever, or some people have had to.
$20 toilet kit,
Yeah,
is very often the culprit. A lot of times people are replacing their own toilet kits. It doesn't require a plumber. You can do that on your own. But if you can show us that you bought the $20 toilet kit, then
Yeah, we had
you'll get
10,000
that.
gallons 1 month before I went on the portal, and it was the toilet.
Yes.
So in the guest house.
the, almost all the people we call, I mean, not every single one, but almost everyone we call, it ends up being a toilet leak. So when people doubt us, we say, just look.
Just check.
You know, we have little tablets they can come pick up and put in their tanks, and it'll tell you if there's a leak, or you can put Kool-Aid in there. It's anything that stays in the tank and leaches a color into the bowl, and then you can tell you have a leak.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Good presentation, by the way.
Yeah, nicely done. The next item is the public hearing number 2 on proposed FY 24-25 annual operating budget. We're going to open the public hearing at 6:11.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? This had an ordinance behind it, I believe. Is that correct? For action?
What's that?
The drought contingency.
Yeah, we're not taking action on it right now. There's still things to be worked out with that.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, what time did you open that?
At 6:11. And after we go through the presentation, the explanation, then we'll open it up for public comments.
So, good evening, council members, staff, and citizens. My name is Leroy Vidalis. I'm the finance director here for the city of Castroville. And so this is budget hearing number 2. Y'all have already seen these slides for this is like the 3rd time. So do you want me to go slide by slide? Do you want me to just concentrate more on the proposed revenues and expenditures, or do you want to go back and look at history and year to date and then propose, or how do I want to do this?
Let's go through it at a high level.
Okay. So if there's any questions, please let me know what questions y'all have, and we'll be able to answer them. So this slide here shows the actual general fund balance. I'm going to go over general fund first. And so this is just the number of days on hand that we have as of the last audit. This is the actual sales tax for property and sales tax, and so how we ended it in fiscal year 23. For property tax, we ended up at 1.2, and for sales tax, we ended up at 1.7.
Did we figure out why we went down from 2022 to 2023? Was it total valuation?
On the property taxes?
Mm-hmm.
It's because we moved it to INS. This is just the O&M portion of the property tax.
I gotcha. Okay, great. Thank
So
you.
this
That makes sense.
demonstrates that.
No, that makes absolute sense.
This slide here shows revenues versus expenditures with the transfers. And so as you can see, there was the transfers are included up on top. And this does not include transfers out of $140,000. Again, this is looking at year 23, fiscal year 23.
Great.
These are some of the amendments that y'all approved last year that we brought to council for approval. This is not all the entire list, but these are just some of the high items that we brought over for approval.
What land did we purchase?
That was over in
The
Country
drainage.
Village.
Next is the enterprise fund balance. Again, talks about the number of days on hand ending in year 23. Looking at ad valorem and taxes, budget versus actual. I mean, I think this answers your question that you were just asking about what you asked Scott about.
Yeah, we were just really far off on that. But is there a reason that we didn't capture that in the budget?
Yeah, well, yeah. So when we built the budget, I failed to account for the INS, shifting those pennies over to INS. So I was anticipating getting more money into the O&M, into our operations and maintenance, and that's why you look at the budget. The budget's higher what we actually received. And it's because, again, we had that first year that it wasn't the first year we did it, but it's the first year we had a nominal impact where we actually shifted a considerable sum into INS. I think the INS rate became 15 cents, and prior to that it was like 8 or something like that. There's a history of our INS rates in our budget document.
All right, that makes sense. Thanks.
All right, next is year-to-date revenues. And these numbers are as of July 31st of 24. So we have our revenue adopted versus actual.
And this is including what you just showed us on the property taxes.
Yes, sir. This is sales tax and property taxes, again, adopted versus actual.
Okay.
What's in blue is what we adopted, what was approved by city council. Orange is what is the actual year to date. And then of course, this is the expected is what's in green.
So we expected on both of those to be lower than what we are actually at this point.
At this point in time, yes, as of July 31st.
That's good.
And at the end of the month, on the next finance report, you'll have numbers as of August 31st. So those will change. Here we have our property values. You got your preliminary that we receive usually in April and May, and then our certified we usually get on July 25th.
Just a bookmark for next year's budget. Let's make sure that we're doing the stacked chart that includes new, for property values, new properties that are coming on the books as of that year, so we can see what that looks like as well.
I guess that was the question I was going to ask. Is this increase in property values, is that new properties or just the value of our existing properties going up?
This is the average. Oh no, this is the total.
It's both. It's
Right,
both.
this is both.
So every time we get the certified appraisals, we'll get an amount for new property. Right now, for the 2024 tax year, I have to stop. It's a 2025 fiscal year, but 2024 tax year, and for the 2023 tax year, so this year and last year both, the percentage of new value has been very low. Even though you see the buildings, it takes a while for that value to actually show up,
Right.
because it depends on when the building was finished and what its value was when it was finished. We should see next year will be the first time we see an actual kind of meaningful blip in new value coming on. And I know that we've talked about, that's one of the things that staff is working on, is forecasting how much value and timeliness of when those, we're working with the financial advisor to do that. That's something I'm hoping to have ready for our October discussion when we start talking about capital planning and future debt issues. But yeah, a stacked, I can see that that'd be very valuable, having just it would only be a sliver, right? The new value is a very small amount, but it'd still be helpful to see that stack. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. And the other question, this is total properties. This has nothing to do with exempt property. So if someone, for instance, military, 100% disabled, where it's zero.
No, that's not correct. This is your certified value, is the value that you anticipate actually getting leveraging tax against.
Right.
So
This takes into account.
this takes into account all the exemptions and everything else. Yes.
And they separate out residential from commercial, don't they, on the county tax roll?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we should maybe even look at doing something like that where you can see like a side by side of those, and then a total next to it. And that way, again, as the new businesses are coming on, we can see what an impact those are making.
That's a great idea.
I don't know if you've ever seen the information that they actually send us. It's incredibly detailed and shows you how much of the different things. I've gone over that during one of my slides about how they separate that out. It's pretty interesting. Good.
Oh, sorry. Good?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the estimated general fund revenues for this fiscal year. These are our current sales tax. Again, this is as of as of August. I was able to put in the numbers for August as far as sales tax and where we're at and where we expect to be at the end of the year.
Notably, our budget estimate was 1.4 million, and we're anticipating getting 1.8. I think there's another 2 slides after this that show this same information a couple different ways, right?
It does. Here's the next one here. remember they're always 2 months behind. So what we get in July is for May.
So that's 5 months.
Yeah. And this is just a different way as well, showing a different graph for that.
Budget is the top line. If we were down 2%. Oh, I got you.
Up 15. So the blue line along the top is the trend line showing where it would be if we were averaging about up 15%. And you can see, looking at the green bars, that there were a lot of months where we were approaching that 15% number, where we collected 15% more than we had budgeted.
Great.
All right. Next is the property tax collections for M&O. We have our ad valorem, delinquent, and penalties and interest. For this year, we had anticipated 1.197, and at the end of July, we're at 1.383. So we're doing very well on our property tax collections.
Penalty and interest is people that don't pay it on time.
Correct. Yes, sir. Next, we're going to go over our year-to-date expenditures, and I'm going to go fairly quick on these. These are as of July 2024, and it's broken out by each department. And so this next slide here just shows a pie chart along with every department listed here as far as what was adopted and the percentage of budget that they're at and what they actually use. And so, and I'll talk about some of the why they're over on some of them.
I can see the big green is police. What's the big blue down below?
Streets.
Streets. Okay, makes sense.
I'm sorry, could we go back?
Sure.
Please, 2 more slides. This one. I thought a couple slides ago it showed that the total taxable value was lower than we had expected.
No.
The total tax revenue, ad valorem tax revenue. Keep going.
On sales,
That was for 20. You remember?
For 2023.
Yeah,
this is 24.
Now we're in 24. Yeah.
That's my confusion.
Yeah.
So here we have the first one going to be city administrator, and these are just some of the key takeaways as far as where he's at. Again, this is as of July, end of July. We got library. We got police. Court.
And the forecast is where we would expect to be at this time.
Yes, sir.
Could you go back one more to the police? That is I was trying to read the takeaways on that. Because everything's a lot better or lower than what we anticipated, right?
Well, no, it's not lower. Your actual is higher than where your forecast would be. It's lower than the adopted budget.
The bottom is also cut off of this graph.
Yeah.
Right.
And the scale's kind of different because you see the scale starts at. Right.
And these are through July 31st?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
again, at the end of the month, you'll get an updated version for August.
But the big
Is that
reason why they're
Accrual or is that actual?
These are actual.
Okay, it says accrual. That's where.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's
Oh,
what-
I'm sorry. It
Oh,
should be
sorry.
actual. Thank you for pointing it out. Next is court. And we have emergency management. We have community development. Streets. Parks and Rec.
Pause on this one for just a second.
That, I think the big thing to point out for citizens is that the $196,160 will be reimbursed to us regarding the community center.
Yes.
Good call out. Which is almost the entirety.
Oh, yeah, about 2/3.
Yeah, we are going to spend 450 of fund balance. So some, it depends on which 900, what out of that 196 is reimbursable and what isn't. But yeah, there will be some amount of cash that we lay out as part of that project.
Here we have animal control.
So, and this is through when?
July.
This is through July.
And the spay and neuter was part of a grant expense.
Yeah. So I'm just curious,
A couple $100 left, I think.
why would we expect to be only at 140? Yeah, we got to fix the scales on this. It doesn't make sense. It looks like it's a huge difference. So let's make sure that we start all these at 0. Okay, never mind. It looks
Yeah,
very much out of
the
balance.
scale
3 or
throws it off.
4% ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
RV park. Finance.
Finance always comes in close.
Strange.
It's because if he looks like he's going to go over, he just moves it to your budget or my budget.
That doesn't happen.
Non-departmental.
Yeah. Pool.
It's the cost of the supplies for the pool, and it helped that drove it up.
Pool chemicals. Yes. We have city council.
Well, and y'all approved the $98,000 improvement to the pool. Remember, and that was half funded with a grant. So 50,000 from general fund and then 50,000 from a private donor.
City secretary. IT. This is the first year we've had VC3, so it does look like we have overspent. And so make sure for the next fiscal year that we budget accordingly with the rates that they've given us. So we shouldn't be in this next year. This is economic development. And again, this is the first year of this budget, and we really don't really spend much of this budget at all. Tourism and business development. Then we have non-departmental.
So what on non-departmental was increased?
It's going to be more of like the catch-all for our insurances, for TML, for ADP, our copier lease agreements, Marsh McLennan, which we won't have that fee any longer next year, that $14,000 as of right now. The AdCom fees, and so this is where this account is used as a catch-all. This really belongs to a certain department. It's just like we're going to put it here.
It affects everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, were there, because it's $28,000 off. So where were the biggest areas? You named a bunch of areas, but what were there certain ones that caught us off guard? Or?
It was probably the TML insurance was the biggie for the most part, and then the AdCom fees those are the fees that every time citizens go use the AdCom, we took on that fee, that credit card fee amount, and ADP would be the next one. There's a monthly fee that we pay for every employee for ADP services for payroll, for HR, and for it's payroll and HR.
So the numbers at the end are the total amount for that line item,
yes,
not an overage.
As of today, correct. Do y'all want to see this type of slide for the finance report in September, like by department, just so I know coming up?
It's really helpful especially when we're significantly over or significantly under, figuring out where we had messed up on the estimations for it.
Well, and there were certain other expenditures that have come up that we didn't budget for, we didn't know, and so I mean,
Sure.
we're going to have that. So yes, I agree. All right, the next one is going to be, now I'm going to go into the proposed revenues for general fund for fiscal year 25.
Can you back up one slide?
Sure.
So these amounts here, those, is that how much you were above
No,
budget, or that's
That's
just
total.
the final? So we don't know how much you were above.
correct. As of July, right.
As of July.
Like the TML insurance, that's already paid for the entire year. We don't need to pay any more than that. But
I think the intent was, the reason you put those numbers in there was just to kind of give you an idea of where that money's being spent and what the larger dollar items.
correct.
But I think to the council's point, what this doesn't convey is, okay, when we were putting together the budget a year ago, what did we anticipate were going to be the expenses, and where are we actually over? Are we over in these items? Are we over in some other items? Where are we over?
Right.
And I don't think we tried, honestly, I don't think we tried to capture that. What he did on most of the slides was just share, here's what the large dollar items. Now it happens that some of those, as you saw before, were grant expenses and some other things came out in the year that were not in the budget because they were opportunity costs. Again, where grants or other authorizations were given by the council where you made amendments and approved specific spendings. So that's just something we need to improve when we do this next time. We need to be able to say, hey, this is what we budgeted and here's where we were off. Whether, because I think for the most part, like the copier lease might be up slightly.
It could be $100 or $1,000.
Right, exactly.
We don't have to speculate on it right now. I'd rather see the details. But
Right.
I think if we're over or under by more than 10%, maybe 15%, you determine where that threshold is. And if it was opportunity cost because we got a grant, then that's great for us to take a look at, just to help us continue to
Agreed.
drive to higher accuracy.
Some of these are lump sum expenses where you spend it once a year, and others are monthly.
Well, that's, I imagine that's taken into account in the forecast, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
No.
Jumps
No.
in.
You're absolutely right. They do too. All the time.
But the services costs have gone ridiculously high nowadays. Supplies, I mean, copier owner alone is that adds to it, unfortunately.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, so the proposed general fund revenues for this year, we have our sales tax, property taxes, court, other revenue. And so sales tax was a projected increase in sales tax from 1.4 to about 1.7. Property taxes are expected to rise from 1.1 to about 1.2. Court is pretty much the same. It remained the same. Then, of course, your other revenue, it includes permits and fees. It also includes a COPS grant for the 2 officers that we're going to get for reimbursement. And so when you look at your total operating revenues for this coming year is a little over $4 million. Then you add in the transfers in from the enterprise fund and part from the airport fund, it comes out to about 4.771 in proposed revenues.
Is it possible, just for clarity for future councils, is it possible to make a line item in each of the departments where we receive grants? Because sometimes it can be like when I've looked at past budgets, you see these spikes and you're like, wow, how'd they make all that money there? And it's a grant.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be really clear.
And if we know what the grant is, we can actually call it, name it that grant. So, yeah.
So I'm going to use the library budget, for example. The library is one of the few departments that routinely receives specific grants. And so we have built into their operating budget, their expenditure budget, those grant-related expenses, and they're called out as grant-related expenses.
If we already know on the revenue side, if we know the grant that's coming in, we'll label it that grant and say, oh, we expect to get this much in revenue.
I just think it would be good to, especially with the historical revenue,
Okay.
separating that out by grant as a revenue source.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, in the airport, we do it. We show that we have the USDA fund,
Right.
grant and everything. So it should be easy.
Yeah.
to
You can do that.
Across all departments.
Okay.
Yeah, that really messed with my head as I was studying some of the past years. I'm like, how did they derive that much revenue in that one department? And it was grants.
Next slide is
You might have to reboot that thing.
You've got lines on your screen, sir.
It's not on mine. I'm not sure why that.
I know. It's just a little dongle. You can either unplug it and plug it back in, or you can try hitting the little light
Anybody got an Alex?
and wait for it to turn green. We took too long. Is it green?
No, it just.
Yeah, just wait for it.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Up now.
It'll just take a second. There it goes.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the general fund revenues. Again, it's looking at our actual approved and what's proposed. And again, the overall amount for the proposed revenue is 4.771. And this does include the transfers in, and you'll see that in orange. This pie chart highlights the importance of each of the revenue sources and their contributions. And so you have your sales tax, property taxes, parks and rec, and so forth. And so you have your actual, then your approved, and your proposed. The what? Oh, this one here has a 0.5233, the lower rate. Yes, sir.
And you have that on a specific slide coming up?
That'll be in the tax rate portion of it.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Again, this is just a different way of showing it. And Mary, thank you for those recommendations on the different models you use. So.
Sure.
All right, so we talked about revenues. Now we're going to talk about expenditure.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
go back and take a look at that. Looking at it just takes me a second to juxtapose them. So we're increasing other revenue.
So sales tax, just giving you an idea, the 23 actual is 1.8. We were in the middle of that year when we were doing the budget for 2024, and we took a fairly conservative approach to that budget and only adopted 1.4. And now, as you just recently saw, we're about to get probably 1.8 by the end of this year. So this coming year, the proposed budget isn't quite as conservative as last year. And we've increased the anticipated sales taxes to 1.7. It's still a little bit conservative depending on how this year finishes out. If we end up finishing the year at 1.8, then you could make the argument, well, then there's $70,000 or more that we might receive next year. But I think this is a prudent estimate as far as what to receive.
Agreed.
Property taxes, again, you'll see that the amount for property taxes is about the same. The year prior, we actually saw a dip because we inflated the INS. We pushed more of the property tax into INS. We did the same thing in this year. You'll see the INS rate increasing again, but because of our overall values and the rate that we're adopting, the actual amount received by the city is only going to be a little bit. It looks like it's 1,237,000, right, versus 1,197,000 that approved. So it's going to be really similar to what we received last year. We're not quite flat. We're up a small percentage. Those are the two big items. Municipal court's getting better and better. We've been doing a lot more traffic enforcement, and that I think will result in higher ticket revenue to the court. But we're still not at where we were prior to the COVID. I think prior to COVID, we were around 190,000 a year, 200,000 a year, and it's taken a long time to get back up to that.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we lost a police chief in the middle of all that, and there were a lot of changes within the department, and it's just taken time to get back to that. stage. But I think the chief has made significant improvement in that area.
Great.
All right, so now general fund expenditures for this coming up year. We have, again, each of the departments are listed here with their actuals, where we ended up at 23, what was approved, and of course what was proposed, and that's the middle column, the middle of the slide. That column is the proposed. Then it also has if it's increase, decrease, and what that amount looks like.
And one of the things that was brought to my attention, I can't remember if we talked about it at the last meeting, but I've shared that, in a very real sense, the adopted budget of any city is one of their more important policy documents. If you look at their budget, in some sense, you can see what it is that they care about, because they're going to fund the things that they care about. And it's not uncommon at all for most cities to see their police, fire, and streets to be in the top categories of funding. That's a very, very common thing to see. Because of the associated expense with those things and the per capita, what you'd anticipate as far as the number of police officers or firefighters per capita, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that was brought to my attention by Councilman Mers is that we didn't really get an opportunity as a council, you all, to talk about, well, what are our priorities and what do we want to fund? And when are we going to have a priority-based discussion as it relates to the budget? So in talking to the mayor subsequent to the conversation with Councilman Mers, I think next budget year, probably in that April timeframe when we're just starting the budget, this will be something that we'll seek council input on. Is, it's one thing to be able to say, well, here's the status quo. If we left all the services the same, which is more or less what the budget process that we go through as a city, we look at, well, what does it cost to maintain our services at the level we're at right now? And that includes pay increases to our folks to keep them, retention, and all the other things that go along with that, training and material cost, inflation costs, and those types of things, building all that in and figuring, okay, now what does it cost to run the city? And then making marginal improvements or changes as we can afford them. And as you all have experienced over the last 3 or 4 years, those changes have been very minimal. And I think there's been great emphasis put on how can we be more efficient as an organization. So things like the kiosk and the other areas where, as we experience AMI and some of the other investments, the capital investments y'all have made that have allowed us to be more efficient as an organization, where rather than adding people, we're adding software and services that address the growth that the city is experiencing. So I think you all have set the city up for the growth that it's going to experience quite well. But all that to say that next year we're going to go through the budget cycle. One of the things that I think we'll do differently as a staff is really try to work with the council and identify whether or not there are any major priorities that you want to try to target, so that we can work through the process of saying, okay, well, what would that look like if we improved that area of service or added an area of service? And we've talked about like incubators or economic development or there's all kinds of things that this council could identify as potential priorities. And we're going to talk about the tax rate. Y'all adopted a proposed tax rate that is much higher than what this budget relies on. But it's those policy discussions where you talk about, well, what really matters and what do we want to prioritize, that enable you to fix upon a rate that funds the things that you think are important, and ideally that your constituents also think are important, because everyone's going to get to pay for that, including myself. So I think we're going to do a better job of going through that process next year. So just wanted to mention that while we're on this slide.
So this next slide has a summary of our revenue and our expenditures. So when you take your revenue of 4.771 and with our proposed expenditures, it's a little less than that. We have a net effect of about $18,000 that we'll have left over. And this is all based on the proposed, or not the proposed rate, but the rate of 0.5233, which is a lower rate. And so again, I just want to make that clear that it's based on that 0.5233 rate.
And that 0.5233 we adopted in 2020.
For the past 3 years, it's been that same rate.
For 2021, 2022, 2023.
Yes, sir.
We're keeping that same rate in the budget.
Correct. But last 2 weeks ago, council had approved the proposed rate, the higher rate.
Understood. I'm saying that more
Yeah.
for the benefit. And I think it's prudent to do this. It opens up the conversation. You say this is the maximum amount that we could put in the budget without having to take it out to a vote, but it still is up to public scrutiny for people to say, yes, I think that there is something that is worthwhile spending. This is the amount of money that you would derive from that, and asking, does it make sense? And it gives them the opportunity to do it, but we still build the budget on what we've committed to, which is keeping the tax rate at the same, right?
Sure.
I'll talk more about that when we get to the tax rate.
Great.
And just talks about the overall major changes to the proposed budget for general fund. Again, salaries, it's about almost $300,000 increase from the approved versus the proposed. You got your supplies. The other biggie is contracted services. It's about $200,000 more that we're proposing this year. Overall, we're going from 4.1 to 4.7. That's about $650,000 increase. And just keep in mind that this does include a 3% COLA increase for all employees, and that's about half of that, almost, not quite, about $300,000 just in salaries alone for that increase.
Is the contracted services including the gas line?
No, this is only general fund. The gas line will be in the enterprise fund.
So one of this would be the, for instance, where we under budgeted by about $100,000 for VC3. That would be in here.
The other one was for Brianna's the.
Oh yeah. So
funds.
the big increase was in our community development department for contracted services, but that's offset by revenue. So we increased. It's kind of like fuel sales at the airport. We increased the amount that we're gonna have to spend with these firms that do all the plan review and inspection for the new houses and new commercial. But we add an administrative fee on top of that, which helps pay for the person that was hired to help process all that. So that's a position. Megan is in that position at Bud Works, and that's how she's actually getting paid for, is through that increase in development.
And these are just the justifications for each of those departments as far as what the percentage was. So again, besides salaries, some were, contracted services, supplies and materials and so forth. Of course, the biggest one was emergency management. I mean, it's $145 or 145% increase, but it's because of the amount that we budgeted this year versus what we're going to go to next year. So it's a lot more.
Yeah, the original budget was only $6,000. I think we increased it to like $13,000.
You have. So next I'm going to go over, we're going to talk about enterprise fund. We've already seen this slide. I just put that in there again. It's the number of days on hand and their fund balance. These are the year-to-date revenues for utility fund, and this is as of June. So the finance report will reflect the new numbers as of August. And so right now, utility sales are outperforming budgeted estimates by an average of about 9% per month. This is due to the rate increase that was effective in March of 2024. So. Here you have your adopted versus actual. We adopted about 6.6 million. We're at 5.6, and our forecast is about 5.5. So we're already above what we had as far as the forecasted amount. So doing very well on the utility side.
Well, I think it's important to note, it looks like, again, a big difference because you didn't start at zero.
Right.
But we are over it, but we're not extremely over it. It's good to be over it a little bit, just not a lot. So that's good.
And that adopted amount includes the use of fund balance of $985,000. But when Scott and I ran these numbers, the forecast, we're not going to have to use the fund balance as of the end of July. We'll go back and look at August and then, of course, September. But as of right now, we don't think that we're going to be using that fund balance amount, so that's even better. This is the just expenditures by department. this is each slide by department as far as some of their key takeaways.
We're calling them departments with their utilities.
So utility, yes. Here we have gas.
Here's
We have sewer. We have electric. And then we have water. And last, we have refuse or garbage.
And this only represents residential.
Correct.
The commercial is billed separately and directly by Waste Management.
Is there a reason that we are, again, it looks a lot more, but it's still $30,000? $30,000 over what we had expected by now?
I know I looked at this to be part of the last meeting. I honestly don't remember. I honestly don't remember why residential was higher than what we anticipated.
Well, then we changed the contract from.
Yeah, I know there was a rate increase, and that may be part of it.
Well, we also shifted it from going from this year of bulk pickup to every month. We went back to that.
Yeah, but that wasn't rate impact.
Yeah, the only rate impact would have been if we added users or we increased the cost. And there was a cost increase. I just don't remember if it happened, if that cost increase went into effect after we adopted the budget, because we did the comprehensive fee schedule. I can't remember when because Waste Management separately negotiated. I don't remember if we had that.
Was January.
Yeah. We can.
Councilmembers had a question.
She wanted a second bin, so that I didn't use her.
Did you have a question or a comment?
I had a comment on the refuse, the electricity, and the gas. A large part of our expenses and revenues for those are pass-through. So, because we charge, and we charge a little bit extra, but most of it goes on to Waste Management, for example, for refuse. And we buy the electricity from someone, we buy the gas from someone, and then we resell it. On those utilities in particular, it might be more meaningful to look at the expenditures and revenues together, so that we can see not just in a given year, both are going to go up, but if we had some unexpected expense, only the expenses are going to go up.
That's a good point.
It would be a little bit more easily understood, I think.
You could never put them side by side.
We can do that for this coming month. Fine. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the proposed revenues for enterprise. Utility sales, it's broken out by sales, services, and other revenue. For sales, we're expected to increase from about 7.5 million to about 8.2. For utility services, it's a slight increase to about $90,000. Use of fund balance, we are going to have these, the fund balance is expected to reduction in fund balance from 985 to about 376,000 to balance their budget. And so right now, what was approved was 8.6, and the proposed is about 8.7. It's about a 1% increase.
So the other revenue, why did it go down so significantly?
I'm trying to think what the other revenue, Scott, do you remember what the other revenue was? No.
Last year we approved 23,000.
There was,
And we got in year to date 139,000. Then forecast was 200,000.
let me look at that, Ms. Martinez, and I'll get back with you on that. That's okay.
Yeah, there's
Other revenue would
I
be
remember
like Bureau Veritas, wouldn't it?
No,
No.
no, this is enterprise, and there's like $130,000 revenue item in there.
I don't remember what that was.
Yeah, well, I think it was a catch up. I think it was a catch up on electric or something, where because of our CPS negotiations. I can't remember. I have to go back.
We can add just a little more
We-
for what
yeah,
the
we'll-
other revenue is. I
That's
mean,
fine. We'll put that
Because
in.
we forecast that it's so small, being able to get in
10 times that.
large amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year was a blip. That I mean, it's not something we anticipate seeing again next year, and I can't remember what it was. But it was one of those oddball things that happens. But I'll find out what it was and let you know. But, yeah. So as he stated earlier, just to prove the use of fund balance in 2024, we do not anticipate using the 985 that's there. We'll see how we actually finish out the year, but right now we're anticipating not using any of that money. In FY, and we may contribute to fund balance by some amount. It won't be very much if we do. And then 25, as he mentioned, we do anticipate using up to $376,000. Now, what will impact that a great deal could be how our gas system works out. One of the big reasons why we weren't using as much fund balance is when you looked at our gas cost and sales, we were anticipating this year, based on the year prior, having a significant increase in the cost of gas. And that it has as Councilman Mers pointed out, it has an offsetting revenue when you sell that gas, but that's one of the big expenses that we haven't realized is that gas expense. And then, so next year, so we reduced, when you look at our gas budget, the proposed budget here's a little bit, we reduced that gas expense in the proposed budget. But we don't know what the operations cost is going to be yet for gas. That's on the agenda tonight to talk about where we stand. At the end of this month, our CPS operations and maintenance contract will expire. So I'll update you all on where that stands and what we anticipate to be our likely annual expenditure, but that could be an area that could have either a positive or negative impact on the use of fund balance. The other thing I wanted to point out while we're looking at the same slide is this does not anticipate any rate increase. So the delta between the forecast for 24 and the proposed for 25 is the rate increase that y'all did last year that went into effect in March. So the next year, this next utility budget year, you're going to have the benefit of an entire 12 months of that new rate that was adopted and put into place at the first part of last year, or this year. I'm sorry, first part of this year. So that's the reason for the increase. And we're doing everything we can to avoid any type of rate increase on any of the utilities.
All right, so now we have expenditures. Again, they're broken out by each department. And so for admin, there's a slight decrease of about 5% with that budget. For gas, it's a decrease of 27%.
And that's that gas I was talking about that we didn't spend this year. So we just reduced it from the proposed budget as well.
In sewer, we expect to see about a 3% increase. Electric, 6% increase, followed by water with the 9% increase. Then with refuse, about 3% decrease in refuse. So overall, it's about a 1% increase in their budget for this coming up year. This is just a 5-year historical operational budget. It does not include any of the bond payments and or any transfers out to the general fund. So this is truly their operational costs, the salaries, supplies, and materials, and so forth. And so that's why these numbers are a little different than what we're proposing.
These are expenditures.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Next slide here, we have our transfers out. About $621,000 gets transferred out to the general fund. And so we have our right-of-way of about $170,000, which is broken out by each department, as well as a franchise fee.
Okay.
Just in summary, are the proposed revenues for Enterprise is 8.7, and the proposed expenditures is 8.7, so they have a balanced budget. And that's the use with, again, they're using their fund balance to balance their budget. So just some of the major changes to the proposed budget. Again, it's a 3% increase for all full-time employees. You got 2 decreases there with utility admin and gas. And of course, you have some slight increases as well on the other, with the other departments than the utility fund. All right, now we're gonna move on to airport, and we're almost done with this presentation. We have our airport fund expenditures. We have our adopted versus actual. Adopted a little over $900,000. We've already spent almost $500,000 as of the end of July, and our forecast is that we should be about $752,000 already as far as forecasted. So,
Was that primarily in fuel sales?
Yeah. So our fuel expense is quite a bit lower than what we anticipated, and you'll see that in the proposed budget that we reduced fuel sales for next year for that reason. But it's a crystal ball every year. You kind of do this, trying to figure out where we're going to be.
so
Have we
here,
identified any trends that are describing why?
Not that I can elaborate on right now, but yes, I mean, Brianna and Michael have had a lot of, Michael's the part-time airport managers out there now, but and our staff, Pete and Harrison, also have talked about why the fuel sales were down at different points in time, and it was either weather related, or I mean, there was various factors that kind of identified why fuels sales weren't quite as strong as they had been in the past. But like I said, I can't elaborate on those right now. Yeah.
so the proposed revenues for airport, we have facility rentals, sales, and other revenue. Rentals increase, there's a 3% increase across the board for all rentals, with the exception for removing the baseball field revenues, which is offset by in-kind by the water department labor. Fuel sales is projected to decrease from $464,000 to about $351,000 in fiscal year 25, and that's a 24% decrease. And then, of course, other revenue is also expected to decrease from $101,000 to about $91,000. So overall, their proposed revenues is over $800,000 for airport.
What's included in other revenue?
That's your ramp grant, right?
Yeah, ramp grant. That's pretty much all that, and the interest they get at the bank. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So here we have the expenditures, and again, it's broken out by the actual, approved, and proposed. And we actually separated fuel sales and debt service as far as on their expenditure side. So their operating cost is about $411,000. Their fuel sales obviously decreased to about $300,000. Their debt service, this is for their bond 2021 payment that they pay every twice a year, and it's $45,000. And then, of course, their transfers out of $6,000. So their overall proposed expenditures is $762,000 for the airport. In summary, again, their revenues is $808,000. Their proposed expenditures is $762,000. And that includes that transfer out over to general fund of $6,000 for a net position of about $46,000. And Mayor, you asked, I think, at the last meeting about their fund balance for airport, and I did. It's about $335,000 that's unrestricted for airport. So that's as of the last audit that took place.
Yeah, we still that doesn't include the purchase of the water rights, right? The lease.
Correct.
Yeah, so y'all leased water rights for 10 years, and that would be an addition. I can't remember what that amount was. Does anybody here remember? 300,000 or so?
Sounds close.
It was something like that. I can't remember the amount, but you would need to add that to that number because that would be the amount that they have in their fund balance.
Okay.
So some of their major changes to their budget is, again, it's a 3% cost of living for all full-time employees, a decrease in aviation and jet fuel sales to reflect lower fuel demand, and of course their debt service payment for USDA loan of $45,000. So that concludes this presentation. Does anybody have any questions, or does the citizen have any questions?
related to the airport, we also have the city has a loan out to them for the fence project, if I remember right or not.
They paid that off.
They paid that off.
Is that what they paid it off?
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Okay.
This is still a public hearing, right?
Yes. We're still in a public hearing, so when he's done his presentation, you can open up for.
Yes, we're going to take a quick recess at 7:05.
What's a quick recess?
Thank you.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. It's until everybody gets back.
Sorry.
Mhm. I didn't bring your plate. I'll bring it Thursday. I think it's Sherry, Josh, Gary. I'll probably mix it. No, I did ask them if they were interested. Yeah. And they said, maybe. But. Hmm? Sure.
You know, one thing about somebody, oh, there he is.
Right here. We have everybody except for city.
I saw I saw a photo yesterday. One of these things came across, and it was looking at the hemisphere and south hemisphere. You don't realize.
Yeah.
It was kind of mind-boggling when I saw that.
All right, we'll start back up as soon as we get staff back. The one who can hit the record button. Maybe they went back and wrapped hot dogs. Did you see that on Fiorella Friday? Bacon wrapped bacon.
They were good.
Oh man,
That's our former.
Just deep fried. Get much better.
Fat,
You're
fat,
busy.
fried, fat.
No, that's her.
Oh, but she worked for you.
She was the British Association.
And what is that?
That's an app.
Can you bring them back in cuffs?
5 feet of,
I just got a report on the streaming thing. Is the go is off.
She found that in her garden.
The sound.
You should have it by the head or the tail.
She
They
sold
can't
the
hear
tail.
me.
The heads
So
are
the
back.
sound isn't working.
I take it someone
Wait,
shot
what?
it.
So they
Oh,
don't
okay.
have.
Somebody stomped on the head. But she just looks as happy as she could be.
Oh yeah.
Called a Texas Flathead snake. That's my favorite kind.
You know how like pointer dogs, their job is to like point. I have pointer cats. They find a bug and they sit there.
Mine bring it back to me.
watching the whole house.
Update.
All right, let me know when you're ready. We'll.
Update for the streaming of that. It's choppy. No matter how close you are to the microphones, you can't. It's bad. That's the update I just got.
Laura said it was
When
fine.
we broke and went to recess, it went haywire and made a bunch of squealing noises. So
Maybe it's at your house.
That's great.
no.
I'm back on.
All right. We're reconvening at what is it, 7:13, and we are through the presentation. Correctly, Leroy?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'd like to open it up to public comment. Public comment. I had a couple people, as people are discussing this, there were a couple of people that reached out. Actually, a number of people that reached out because it was very confusing what was put in the paper. I think they said it was a 38% tax increase, and so people were naturally upset. I probably
You can
got
thank the great state of Texas. That
It's-
language is required by law.
very confusing.
Yep.
And so I didn't get a single person that was in favor of increasing the tax rate. Surprisingly, had a lot of people that were very concerned about it. I took some time with them to explain to it. Thank you for sending the email. I got emails and texts, and I think that you each received some of this as well. So it's good community feedback. It's good that people are paying attention and that they're giving that feedback. It's unfortunate for the confusion that came out of that. Okay, so anybody want to speak for public comments?
Would comments about the tax rate also be appropriate during this time? I'm not sure if there is a separate public hearing. Like,
What's that?
would public comments about the tax rate be appropriate at this time?
Yeah, this is,
Well,
so this is,
no,
This is budget. This is
Oh.
budget.
Yeah.
You have a budget hearing that's open, so we're entertaining comments on the budget.
okay,
So no,
Okay.
there'll be a tax hearing, and then you can. Oh, there's not.
no.
That's why.
We've had
Yeah.
two.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that if anybody had any comments on the tax rate, that would happen right now. It doesn't happen during the other item. So if there's any comments that want to be made, that's why I wanted to make sure
Okay.
that I brought up, those were the public comments I got from a number of different people that were opposed to increasing the tax rate. I'm opposed to increasing the tax rate. I think that I think I said this before, I think it's prudent for us to approve the higher one, to have that conversation in case there's something where people feel like we aren't investing enough in a certain area. We had that conversation a few years ago. We did a slight increase so that we could do very specific street projects, and those were accomplished. And I just want to make sure that people understand that we are doing the budget based on what that is. And so once I got that cleared up, everybody, I didn't hear any other comments on that.
Can I ask a question?
Herb first. Let me recognize him.
Maybe we're going to ask the same question.
I think by voting at the last meeting for a ceiling that was higher than 05233, we created a lot of unnecessary turmoil. My phone's been ringing off the hook. My email's been burning up.
Yep.
As you said, everybody that called me is upset that they think we're going to raise their taxes. And I think it was unnecessary because we had a strategy that we approved 3 years ago where we said we were going to try to keep the rate constant for 5 years. And kudos to the staff that built this budget. They built it on an assumption that the tax rate would stay at 05233. And I think it's a good budget.
And I kind of wish that would have been conveyed in that article as well.
It wasn't. And the newspaper doesn't cover the details as much as I would like to see them. They usually cover everything you say, but they don't cover much about anything anybody else says, which I think is a shortfall.
Well, it doesn't help that our microphones don't work very well, so they can't hear all of us on our opinions and that if they're watching the video or watching it live now.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Councilman Mertz.
So I had a statement from a citizen who wanted to speak. So would that be appropriate at this time?
Sure.
All right. I have a statement from Valerie Youngman at 218 Alvina, who could not make it tonight, but sent me what she wanted to say. And I quote, "Both David, her husband, and I are opposed to the tax increase the city administrator and finance director are proposing. A 38.81% increase is excessive for homeowners, especially as homeowners are already struggling with increased prices on virtually all consumer products. For this reason, I'm sure you are aware many people are having difficulty making ends meet. Please reconsider your previous vote of yes and vote no to this tax increase. We appreciate your service, David and Valerie Youngman."
And that was pretty much in line with everything else that I had heard. Okay. Councilman King.
I was just going to ask, where's the appropriate time to talk about this? Because the public comment has to do with the budgets, but we can't have another public comment period where they invite anybody to talk when we talk about the tax.
Right, that's why we open it up here. And I'm just opening it up if you had heard anything back that you wanted to express. I think that I lumped the number of one, kind of like what Councilman Dyer did, just kind of lumped them all. There were a number of them into unanimous opposition.
And I think, as Scott said, I agree with what you said. If you don't throw it out there to see, but unfortunately, what was thrown out there was a number that was mathematically
Misleading.
No, misleading. But again, by the state, that's the way they tell you have to report it.
Well,
But you want to
And even
explain that?
even if we would have expressed it at the current rate of 0.5233 per $100 evaluation,
It should have been over 20.
what's that?
It would have been about 22% is what it would have shown.
That's what it would have showed. What it actually is
0.0014 or something like that. I just want to clarify, we're still in the budget hearing?
Yes, we
right?
are.
Yeah, this is-
Okay, all right.
I was just opening up for people who had heard from
So
citizens.
here's my suggestion on
Yep.
what we should do. We should go ahead and get back on track with the agenda.
Right.
Let's have that budget hearing and hear from the public on that. When the council gets down to that tax rate for the tax rate items, somebody from the council from the dais can make a motion to open it back up for public hearing on the tax rate only. Motion second, take a vote on that. If the vote is yes, we want to hear more from the citizens on the tax rate, then we'll proceed on with that. If that motion fails, then we'll stick with what's on the agenda and continue to move on.
Perfect. All right, I like that. All right, so last call. Did anybody want to speak? Okay, so we will close the public hearing at 7:20. The next item is consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance setting the 2024 tax rate of option A, the 0.5965 per $100 evaluation, or option B.
We're on item number 11.
Did I miss that again?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had my notes on that. I apologize. Consider and take appropriate action on adopting an ordinance of the FY 2024-2025 annual budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025, and authorizing expenditures as therein provided. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Great. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have something in.
Yes, please.
In my discussions with citizens, something that came up over and over was that they would not like to see a tax increase, but there were also quite a few who said they would not like to see a tax increase if it was a blank check or if it was not tied to a budget item. So to set the budget before we've decided how much we're going to collect almost seems a bit premature.
We're actually doing this in order.
This is the legal order.
Yeah.
What I was going to recommend is that we have citizen comments on the tax rate before we set the budget item, if that's possible.
And that's up to y'all. However, the adoption of all of these items must follow the tax code and the local government code. And that means adoption of the budget. And I noticed here that we have the ratification item out of order here. So it's adoption of the budget, ratify the property tax increase included within that budget, and then adoption of the tax rate. That is set by statute. We have a choice.
We need to move 13 before 12.
Yep.
But clarifying the tax rate that is, you heard Leroy Dallas mention a couple times, our finance director, that the tax rate that is built into this budget, and I heard Councilman Dyer mention as well, is 0.5233. So the budget you're adopting relies upon that tax rate. So I want to make that clear. The ratification of that tax rate is what will come next, as you heard our attorney just state. And then you will actually, when we get to the tax rate item itself, you can talk about the tax rate, why we selected that rate. We can get into some of the things, Mayor, that you were talking about, the strategy, if you will, INS rates, et cetera.
So I think the best way to look at that is if you are opposed to maintaining the existing tax rate that this entire thing is built on, that you would vote nay. And if you were in favor of adopting this the way that it's written with the current tax rate, then you vote aye. All right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And one more thing.
Oh, it's all
Oh, individual. Yeah, roll call.
Okay, Council District 1,
Aye.
we're still on this. District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 4?
Aye.
District 5?
Aye.
The budget is adopted.
The budget is adopted. Yes,
Another one.
another year. All right. So now we're going to move, you said move number 13. Okay, so consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance ratifying the property tax increase reflected in the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget that would require raising more revenue from property taxes than in the fiscal year 2023-2024 for the use and support of the municipal government for the city of Castroville. Again, this is confusing. Do you have an actual presentation? Okay.
So I did want to mention, so the verbiage that you see there is prescribed by state law. I know it sounds slightly confusing because it says things like more, et cetera. As we've already demonstrated, the no new tax rate would be 0.5222, and the rate you're adopting this evening is 0.5233. So the difference is 0.0011%. on your levy, on your tax levy. So it's a very, very, very small amount, but it is an increase. And that's why that language is there. Yes.
But we haven't voted on a tax increase now.
No, you're ratifying, this action item ratifies the rate that would be required to support the budget.
Right.
So you're not adopting the rate, but you're ratifying it, and I've made it clear that that rate is 0.5233.
And I just wanted to say, in this packet, it's very confusing because there's two different options. With the budget being the 0.5233, it would be option B, is what the ordinance under option
That's the
B
next item.
Right.
for the ratification. No, this is the ratification
Yeah.
ordinance.
Because we moved 13 in front of 12.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Do you have the actual number from our worksheet? That's the amount that you're collecting. Because this amount should be the amount that you're collecting off the ad valorem based on new property or raise or higher lease values.
It's showing in this ordinance, 25,739 on the new properties.
I need to ratify that increased amount of 25,000.
739, which is in the heading of the ordinance.
It's in the heading of the, it's in the heading.
In the heading of the ordinance, yes, sir, on option B.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve as the city secretary mentioned?
Second.
Can you clarify what you just?
Oh, I'm sorry, who just made the first motion?
So what she just said, okay, let's be very specific about this. What she just said was, where is this?
Starting here.
In the ordinance, you said the amount was 269,313?
No, 25,000.
Where's that?
Increase.
Increase.
You and 13.
I think it basically, the motion was higher.
Oh, there it is, okay. I'm on the wrong page there, okay. So, again.
It's gonna be 13B in yours. Under his packet, it would be 13B is what he's looking at.
13, okay, that's why. I was
Yes, sir,
13.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So the motion you said should be,
It's in the recommended motion.
yes,
So I ratify the property tax increase reflecting the fiscal year 24-25 budget of, and I think we put in the amount, which is
$20,739.
Well, that comes in,
it's option B.
Time out. The budget, it raises it 25,219 or 1.47% increase.
okay. So I think that the motion is take appropriate action on ratifying the property tax increase reflected in the fiscal year 2024 budget that will require more revenues and property taxes than in fiscal year 2023-2024 by $25,219. Is that correct?
You can continue reading, yes.
Cindy, is that?
I think that the amount that y'all are going with is at 25,739.
Correct.
25,700.
That's the next arrow. So you can continue reading, or 1.47%.
Please.
I can also read it.
Oh,
Like, we have a current motion. Do we need to drop it?
No, that's the motion.
And I apologize, I didn't hear who made the motion. Okay, Paul. And the second was by Bill. Got it.
Yeah.
Ratifying the property tax increase reflected in the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 budget that will require raising more revenue from property taxes than in the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 budget by $25,219 or 1.47% increase. And of that amount, $25,739 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the roll this year.
Okay, so the motion,
That is the ordinance, yes.
Yes.
okay,
So you agree to the change.
you agreed to the change for the motion
And I agree to the change
on the second?
on the second.
Okay, great. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call.
You do.
Uh,
Roll call.
District 1,
Aye.
District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4.
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Last one.
Now it's the tax rate.
Consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance setting the 2024 tax rate of option A, 0.5965 per $100 in valuation, or option B, 0.5233 per $100 of taxable valuation for the tax year beginning January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025.
And this is where we would make the motion to open up for public comment on this item for the tax rate, proposed tax rate. So I make that motion.
All right. Did anybody want to speak for this?
We have
Okay.
a second now.
Yes. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
What is the motion, please?
The motion is to open it up to public
Open up
comments.
to Public comment
A question.
per the guidance of Senator.
Okay.
So we would have the opportunity to talk after the public comment,
Yes.
or we would have an opportunity to talk before the public comment if we made the motion after, after our discussion, then we could open up for public comment then.
I'm okay either way.
I don't
Well, you have a motion on the floor.
Either way, what we do know is we have a motion on the floor,
And a second.
And
Yep.
second.
second, we're all
Yeah.
in favor, then you all can determine who you want.
So we have a motion and a second. We can open it up now, and then we can reopen it if we need. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I had at least 5 emails that
But we
Yeah, we haven't opened
We
it
hadn't
up.
opened anything.
So we
we're
need to
still
vote
waiting on
now.
a vote.
So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so we are opening this up for public comment. Would anybody in the audience still like to start? And then we'll have the same conversation from the people that we've received from. Same, please. Come up, state your name and your address for the record, and please make your comments.
I would mess this up for you.
I'll probably just swing the mic over a little bit.
Sure.
Perfect, thanks.
My name is Mickey Holzhaus. I live at 514 Washington Street here in Castroville. And I'd like to say, first of all, that the finance director, Mr. Leroy Vidalis, did an excellent job in presenting the numbers. Maybe a little too fast for my eyes, but the information was very comprehensive and very easy to understand. What was in the paper, obviously, everyone concurs that it was confusing, and certainly we took it at face value. I believe the population here in Castroville took it at face value. I did. I didn't send an email. I came tonight to express my opinion about no, as everyone else or as others have in texts or emails to you. So my wife and I are in the opposed to the tax rate of 0.59, et cetera, et cetera. The whole process is confusing. I understand you have to follow protocol, the law, et cetera. I think that Mr. Mers tried to open it up for discussion prior to all of that, and I think that would have been a good idea. I didn't voice my opinion from the floor because it probably wouldn't have been well received, but I think your approach, Mr. Mers, was accurate, and we could have avoided a lot of more confusion. Obviously, you have a balanced budget. We, the citizens of Castroville, have had rate increases of all our utilities this year. We've had our appraisal of our property go up, so our taxes have increased. And I would appreciate, my wife and I would appreciate that you vote no for raising the tax rate to the point, to the threshold where you don't have to vote. So thank you very much.
Great. All right. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Joe Holzhaus at 602 Berlin Street. I as well would like to ask the council to go with the option B of the tax rate of .5233. Because because just in my house alone, the value this year went up $75,000. So that's going to raise my taxes, just city alone, to almost $400 more this year. And if we adopt the tax rate of 0.5965, then that would raise my taxes to $2,600, which would be another $323. So I think this, from going from 2023 to now, that would raise my taxes, I think, $717. So that's quite a bit of money. So I just asked the council to go with option B. Thank you.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? I will start on this side. If you would like to, I'll start over with District 1, if that's all right. This is public, so let's keep these limited to any communication that you received on from the public, and express that, not our own individual opinions.
So I've had several people come to me at the hardware store and text me and call me. The citizens, I have the masters properties and businesses that they are around town said that the taxes on both their homes and their commercial businesses have gone up. The economy is not doing great, and the cost of supplies and everything have gone up. So they really want the tax to stay the same, not to increase. Then I had Andermatt contact me, Vince and his wife. They also, businesses and their personal property, taxes have gone up, lives have gone up. He's in construction, so they're against it. Then I had one of my constituents call me, and he's a senior citizen. He's on a fixed budget, and he talked to the county. The county turned around and said, yeah, your property taxes, if they raise it to that amount, you'll be paying $300 or more for your property tax a year. And he can't afford it. He's on a fixed budget, medication costs and everything. So they don't want it. Everybody I've heard, they don't want it. It's not the time to do it. And they also said, I had another person, Mr. Neighbors, Nathan, he called me and he's like, listen, when we did the 5.225233 increase, we presented a plan of what projects we were going to go after and everything. So, and I said, well, maybe next year when we do this again, since it's an annual thing, we'll add it there. He was like, good, because we got stuff that be done. But if you don't have anything projected for it, how can the citizens support it? But he said, right now with the economy, he is against it as well.
What I'm going to recommend at this point is, I think that unless we're hearing the same thing that we all believe ourselves, and that is that we need to, especially because we just adopted the budget with that rate. I think that this is, at this point, I don't know that it's going to sway us any one way or the other. If anybody heard something opposing to that, I would love to hear who would actually want us to increase that for something that hasn't been identified. Is there anybody that heard anything other than people who were against raising the tax rate?
I heard things other than people who were strictly against the tax rate. One person had in a previous conversation told me they were in support of raising taxes, but changed their mind when they saw 39% in the paper. And I heard from one person in my district that they were opposed to raising taxes if it was a blank check, but were open to the possibility if it were tied to a line item in the budget. The example I used in the conversation with him was outside the O&M budget. But he said he would support a property tax increase if it were tied to a permanent annual street replacement program, as an example.
Absolutely.
Everybody that I heard from, including both commercial owners and residential owners, were unanimous in opposition to the raise. The economy is just pretty much flattened everything, and I think that coupled with the commitment that the city council made to try to keep taxes the same for 5 years, I think I'm very proud of the staff. I think they did a good job, and I think what we're doing is the right thing to do, because not everybody's taxes are going to be exactly the same because everybody's valuation is different. So some people have a real horror story, and some people are just struggling to pay the bills. So I think what we've done is good.
Absolutely.
I support it.
Great. And again, I'd like to remind you that this portion of it is public comments. We can close that out and have a discussion, but let's keep this to the public comments that you've heard. Is there anything else that we haven't already heard? I don't want to squelch any voices, but I don't.
Everything I heard was in opposition to an increase.
Same thing. Not a question. Okay. So we're going to close the public hearing portion of this and reopen the agenda item. And now we can have that discussion if that's all right.
What time you closing it?
Well, we didn't.
We didn't.
do
No,
time.
it wasn't a published one, but thank you. Yes.
Related to the topic, Scott, remind me again, in Castroville, our property taxes are frozen after a certain age if you apply, is that correct?
Yeah, if you apply, yes.
Okay, so, and again, this doesn't sway my vote one way or the other, but just so people are calm, that frozen property tax, it's frozen to the tax rate when people when they applied, if they did, and they were 65.
That's
so elderly people don't have to worry about their property taxes going up because this really affects people less than 65.
If they own their own home.
If they own their own home.
If you're in a rental and you're over 65, unfortunately, you're going to pay whatever that landlord charges you, right? But yes,
That's only
if you
on
own
the
your own
city
home,
portion of it.
You're 65 and you've applied for it on the city's rate, exactly,
Yes.
Mayor. On that portion of the city's rate, you will be paying whatever rate and value you were paying at the time that you turned 65.
Right.
That gets frozen in time, both the rate and the value. The only thing you can do to change that is if you make improvements, not if the home value improves, but if you make improvements to the home, like adding a pool or building a second story on a single story or something like that, then that new improvement will be assessed in the year that it's recognized on the tax rolls, and that'll get added and frozen at the time that happens. And then it'll get added to your total and carried forward. That's the only way that kind of can and does change. And what we track when we talk about the slicing, dicing data, the tax appraisal office does track the values. So you can see what your market value is, and then you see what your assessed value is. And the difference between the market and the assessed is your abatements or your discounts, or whatever you want to call those. So that for someone who's got a frozen, let's say they turned 65 20 years ago and they're 85 today, they can actually see their appraised value, which very well could be, we'll just use a modest $100,000 house that now is worth 260, and they'll see the market value that 260, but their appraised value at the 100 that it was 20 years ago, and they're still getting taxed at whatever that rate was 20 years ago.
So related to that, and I'm not advocating we do this, but if we voted tonight to raise taxes 100%, those people over 65 or older who've applied for this in Castroville alone, it's frozen. It doesn't go up.
Correct.
And also, I believe,
Except the rate. If the rate changes, then it still goes up, doesn't it?
No, not if you're over 65. They're frozen at the rate and the value. Both.
The rate and the value. Okay.
Yeah. So everything's frozen. So if you're 66 years old and then apply for this, then it's not an issue. It's for people younger.
Correct.
And the second thing is, oh shucks. That was it. I believe the only government entity in Medina County that has frozen rates is Castroville.
Subsequently, 2 other cities have done that. They followed suit.
I think the county might.
The
also
county
have
did it,
one.
and the city of Divine did it last year.
Okay.
For this year. So it wasn't in effect last year. It'll be in effect this upcoming tax.
Wasn't there one of the other cities that just recently adopted?
I'm not aware of. There may be. I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Okay.
To her, Councilman Dyer wants.
Well,
Yeah.
just to finish up,
So my personal belief is that, yes, listening to the citizens, I understand. I think if we were to come with very concrete, this is why we should be asking for this, I think it would be good. But when you actually look at the budget, we actually do well by several $100,000 through this past year, and now we're saying, well, yeah, we still think these are good numbers. We always hedge a little bit, but we want this additional thing. I could see where citizens would have a concern of that.
Yep, absolutely. Councilman Dyer?
I think it's important that everybody should understand, every 5 years, every resident is required to recertify their homestead, their over 65, and their disability. And so that means that this year, like I just received, I'm one of the 20% that got a letter this year. So I have to go in and recertify for my family for the next 5 years. So don't think it's a one and done thing. It's not.
That's good.
You have to recertify those three and any other exemptions that you are applying for every 5 years. So pay attention to the letter you get from the tax office, because if you fail to complete the letter and send it back in, you will lose your exemptions in the next tax year. So pay attention.
Good call out. All right. Anybody else?
No, and, talking with citizens that, like when we did this 0.5233, we had our projects up front and they go, well, if you do that, yeah, I can support it. Like the drainage problem that we have, if that's tacked onto it, or major street projects or what have you, then they'll support it like we did. But right now, they're like, with the economy and that, it's not the time to do that to them. And I agree.
Yep.
It is not the time to burden our citizens where they already have enough burdens with everything else.
I think that we can easily label our economy currently as tumultuous.
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Burrs?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I had that discussion with the city administrator about, thinking about our priorities and thinking about services or goals we have for the next year's budget, is because I feel like, for example, like whenever someone reached out to me, I tried, if I had the time and if it seemed like they were open to having a conversation, I reached back out to them and I'd say, okay, I see you're opposed to a tax increase. I'm also opposed to a tax increase without a purpose or without something tied to it. What would be worth this tax increase to you? No one took me up on my suggestion of daily donut deliveries to every house, but
then you'd have the added expense of the gym to work off the donuts.
There were a number who, I don't think most of our citizens realize that we don't repave streets as part of our O&M budget. That's something that's handled by debt every couple decades. And I used that example a few times, and a lot of people who contacted me were outside my district, but that actually went over relatively well. There were a number of people who were open to the idea of raising taxes to move that into O&M, which would, I'm not going to do fast math here in the meeting, but and I'm also open to the idea of potentially raising taxes next year if we have a particular policy goal in mind, like moving that into O&M, or like adding one police officer on duty at all times, that we have far enough in advance to take to the citizens and work through that so that they know this is what we're buying with the tax increase that's going to look super scary in the newspaper in September. But right now, we have not had the chance to do that homework.
And better yet, the people that have ideas on what that would look like, have them champion it and bring it in mass to us. Because I personally don't want to champion anything that increases the costs, because, costs are increasing across the board, but I would love it if people champion causes that they believe are worthwhile. And I'd much rather do it inside of our existing rates if we can. Councilman Carey, anything else? All right.
Can I just
Yes,
go over kind
please.
of the general strategy, just speaking to what Councilman Murs just mentioned? So the reason the city council elected to keep the rate the same at 0.5233 was we knew that at the time, at a minimum, we had Alsatian Oaks that was going to add 900 and some odd homes. And that those homes, because they're in this TERS, that a portion of their tax rate is going back to that developer to repay him for all the public investments or public improvements that were made. But the portion that he doesn't get returned contractually is the interest and sinking amount. And so this council embarked upon a strategy to increase the interest and sinking rate over successive years. And that's what we've been doing. Now, some of that we accomplished fairly quickly and easily by issuing some debt to go do those projects. And you did that basically 3 years ago now, to go do streets, et cetera. Now, that was to support the comprehensive capital investment plan, which you all adopted. And most of those projects have either been completed or nearing completion at this stage for the general fund. As we look to the future, and goes back to that model that I'm working on with our financial advisor, we can anticipate that as those, so right now, this proposed rate, just to clarify, the INS portion of the rate would now be 0.1746. And when you compare that, for instance, to the last couple of years, you've been able to raise that from 0.0318, so just a little over 3 cents in 2020, to then 8 cents in 21, to then 12 cents in 22, 15 cents in 23, and now 17 cents in 24. So at some point in the near future, you're gonna reach a point where you're gonna be able to issue some new debt that the new growth will help you pay for without changing your overall rate. And the way that you'll accomplish that is you'll shift some of the debt that you've taken on from the utility fund back to the utility fund, where it will pay for it. And you'll be able to go do new projects to the general fund that will largely benefit this area, like the old portion of Castroville. That was kind of the master plan, if you want to think about it, that the council embarked on. And the thing that has been a wrinkle in that plan really has been the growth that slowed. It went from, man, we thought we were going to have this gangbuster growth almost overnight, and then that slowed tremendously to almost a complete stop at one point. And now we're just now seeing that come back. And we'll see what this election brings and what the new year brings, but we're anticipating that will continue to increase. And that's where that forecast is going to play a role. And we'll be able to start to chart out, okay, when exactly can we do this? When you make that choice to go issue that debt, that'll be, I think, the opportunity for this council to look at what is the overall tax rate that we want to try and adopt, because more than likely you'll be able to, depending on the amount of growth that happens in these years, especially when you have Flat Creek and Alsatian Oaks coming on and both building houses consistently, you're going to see a significant amount of new value that comes onto the property rolls. When that happens, that's going to create an opportunity for the tax rate to actually either decline from where it has been and go issue that debt, or to maintain some portion of that rate. And that will be that discussion, I think, that Councilman Murs is alluding to, where the public will need to know, okay, this is what we're doing with the rate, and this is why, and these are the investments that we're going to be able to make in our community.
Absolutely. All right. So do I have a motion to approve? What is this motion?
I have a question about
Yeah.
the motion. I'm looking at it here, and it does say that the state law requires the following motion. Is that correct, that motion? It says has something to do with increasing the tax to this rate, which we're already at.
Yeah, you're increasing, even though you're keeping the rate the same from last year, you're essentially increasing it because you're not adopting the no new revenue rate of 0.5222.
But the actual text says the property tax rate will be increased by. I'm just really disturbed by that language requirement since it's not true.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to laugh at y'all, but that is the actual statutory language that
Okay.
you have to use. It's
All right, I just wanted to get that on the record.
So even though we're keeping it the same,
Even though you're
We have to
keeping it
say
exactly
this.
the
Okay.
same, that language
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion.
that the folks in the council
I was getting off the before.
And therefore, I move that the property tax rate be increased, quote unquote, by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.5233, which is effectively a 0.21% increase in the tax rate.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, who wins that tie?
I'll take it.
Scissors, come on.
All right. Had a second by Councilman Murs. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Roll
Aye.
Oh, roll call?
Normal.
Is this a roll call or a?
regular vote.
All right.
Okay.
Motion passes
so we're keeping it at the same rate.
by raising it
Change even though we.
to the new rate. Yes.
It's a new old rate.
And I want to say, again, kudos to Leavenworth for all of this, because every 2 years I drive me crazy when the state legislators change the language that we have to use.
That rate that you just adopted, in the language it says 0.21% increase, and some people may read that as, because it's 0.21%, that's 21%.
No,
It is 0.0021. It's
It is
0.21%.
1/5 of 1%.
Yes.
And I have to concur with Mr. Holtzhaus about the presentation on that. I think that you're getting more and more clear on those. So I really appreciate that. I think it makes it more
Yes.
digestible for the average people. It makes it more digestible for new council members, makes it more digestible or understandable for the general public. So excellent job on that.
Yeah.
Still, we'll need to continue to do those tweaks, but perfect. All right. Next item is consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance adopting the FY 24-25 comprehensive fee schedule. Scott, are you going through the fee schedule then?
I can. You've got a submitted list with the changes in red. We can go line by line, or you can just ask questions, the ones you have questions about. Of course, here. Yeah. Was that a hand?
Well, that's a hand to ask questions when you're ready to let me answer the question.
Okay.
I move we adopt the ordinance as presented.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
She wins this time. Okay, further discussion.
Further discussion, we talked earlier, some council meetings ago, that it used to be to get a second meter at your house. Unfortunately, we're charging a $2,500 capping fee for the second meter on the same property. Whereas several years ago, we didn't charge the $2,500 capping fee. We did charge the cost to install the meter. And I remember at that discussion, we said, apologize, it's just the way it is, or we can visit that when we come up with comprehensive fee
Sure.
schedule. So my suggestion is that because people are putting in a second meter so that they can, for just the irrigation, that way it's separate and away from the the sewage, the household sewage fee. And I've had several constituents who've come and said, why did you guys raise that fee? Because otherwise they would have put in a second meter. And so I would tie it into this motion, if people would consider changing that to where we don't charge them that tapping fee for water for a second meter on the same property. And I would say that both commercial and residential, if it's just for irrigation.
Yeah, there's still some amount of work that would have to be recouped. So it's not like we couldn't charge anything, but maybe it's not $2,500.
No, I'm saying not the tapping fee, but if you look at the fee, there's a tapping fee, and then there's also the actual meter installation fee.
Which is $250.
The reason we had to stop allowing them to do it the way where there was no fee is they were not tapping. They were taking a angle off of the existing line and putting their meter in behind their existing meter, and TCQ said, nope, you can't do that. They have to put a separate tap on
water line.
On your main.
Right, and I don't mind that, but the reason for the tapping fee was to go back and pay for the infrastructure. I mean, we have our tapping fees to pay, not to connect it up to the pipe, but to pay for the whole infrastructure to bring it in. So if you're already bringing it to the property, then, and if it is more than the $200, whatever the actual cost of to make the tap itself is far less than the $2,500.
I'm not sure what the $200 we're talking about, but we reassessed how much it cost the tap device, put in the hours, the labor time and all of that, and it's $2,500.
Well, right
That's
now,
the cost of the taps have gone up, and what is the $200 we're talking about?
Under meter fees, meter connection, water for 3/4 inch pipe is $175. The
Smart
1 inch pipe is $250.
Isn't that's smart meters? That's the cost of the meter. So they would have to also, well, we wouldn't probably charge them for, when they have an existing meter and it's replaced, we do not charge them for it. So,
but we're talking about the second line.
Right, that one would be up to you guys.
So you were saying they can't tap into their existing 1 inch or 3/4 inch line?
To their service line. It
Have
has
to go
to be
into the main.
right.
Okay.
TCQ does not, it's a sub-metering issue at that point.
and when you actually looked at the cost to actually tap into the line, you thought it was close to $2,500.
We got it as close to not going over or anything, just the, all the components that it takes.
So when a new,
Unfortunately, the cost of everything has gone up so much in the past few years, it's unbelievable.
Can I clarify something real quick? Because I don't think I fully understand the sub-metering issue, and I apologize if we didn't bring this up before, but when you have, so you've got your main line, you come off of it with a tap, you've got your water meter there. I've seen other instances in the past where they will tee off of that line between your main line and their meter. They tee off of that line. The distance may vary depending on how close the meter box is to your main line, but usually it's 3 to 4 feet off at least. You tee off of that, come over here, plant another meter, and that is your irrigation line. How is that a sub-meter?
Because it's two meters on the same line. Yeah.
That the branch off of it,
Okay.
it's considered a lift.
So isn't
I just don't understand.
Different people at TCQ.
Yeah, I just don't
That's
understand
what
the
you mean
objection
by-
by TCQ against that because.
But you're not sub-metering if you're,
It's a direct.
sub-metering is,
Yeah,
what's that?
sub-metering is if you had a meter below a meter. That's the way I think of
That's sub-metering, right?
But,
That is what it, and it, you have your main meter here in your service line, and you tee off of the service line, it's a sub-meter to that main meter.
no.
Because you have to put it in such a way that you don't double bill them. You know what I mean? That this, all the water goes through here,
But that
and
was
then
it.
it goes through this meter, so you have to have it where it separates properly so that there's no chance that you're double billing.
I'm still my question, but they're
well, I had a
discussing
comment.
this.
Okay. There's no.
well, no, this is appropriate to that because
Oh, no, that's fine.
if you can tap into it between the tap off of the main line, there is a line that runs up to that meter. So between the tap on our main line and the meter, if you put it upstream of that to a separate meter, you are not double billing. You're pulling from the same location, but you're pulling from the same location if you tap into the main line anyway.
And I have been involved in a lot of development where a single line was brought in, 1 inch line was brought in and applied to 2 meters to 2 different properties.
Yeah, and
So
we
I
did have, I want to say there was like 8 that were done the way you're saying, and TCQ looked at them and said you shouldn't have done them, that they're not, you're not supposed to tee off of the service line to provide another service.
So for clarification, can we research this and come back to the comprehensive fee schedule and change that with a separate?
Yeah, well, I would suggest that separate and apart from this is a discussion about reducing people's water consumption, allowing them to be able to carve out their irrigation and track that more accurately.
Right.
And then figure out what your policy is about sewer charges related to that, and if you want to encourage that type of behavior and that tracking, then that's almost a completely separate animal anyway, because there might be a different funding mechanism you want to use. You may want to set up some type of more or less grant system where you're encouraging that to be developed, but we'll look into that.
Okay, so let's pull that as something that we should address
But
subsequently.
related to that, but following this, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the capping fee that we charge, which we have to, get the board to go all that is actually a capping fee to connect into the line. It's not the physical cost to connect into the line. So like in the new subdivision out there, Alsatian Oaks, all those connections were charged a capping fee to connect into our line. But that was above and beyond the cost to the city to actually connect into those pipes.
I don't think that's true.
So there's impact fees that you collect, right? And so that helps, build your infrastructure. And there's the actual tap fee itself, and that's just the labor and the materials to actually build that line to the main line, and then there's the meter fee.
So the
impact fees may be what I'm talking about, but we're not charging an impact fee.
Right, we're talking pure labor to install the tap for that new meter.
Should we be charging an impact fee for new, let's say we have a vacant lot, no utilities there, we don't charge an impact fee for someone to connect into those utilities.
We do.
Yes, we do.
We do.
And that's also in the fee schedule.
Yes.
So there's an impact fee, a tapping fee, and the meter fee.
But if someone wanted to put a irrigation meter on their property now, we would not charge them impact fee because their property has already impacted the system.
Okay.
Can we, just in the
That
interest of
answers my
time, I would like to dig into this at another time. Is that okay if we skip over that item?
That answered my question.
I want to mention that Kathy, sorry, can I clarify something real quick? So Kathy, built into this comprehensive fee schedule are the surcharges that you proposed earlier, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to point out to you all that your motion includes the approval of those surcharges, but the surcharges will not go into effect until you adopt the ordinance or make the change to make them go into effect. And at that time, if you choose to change the amount or anything else related to that, that would impact this fee schedule, we would bring an amendment to the fee schedule at the same time. So one of the things that we try to do in the fee schedule is anticipate. So for instance, in the fee schedule, there's a number of items related to a community center that does not exist today, but we put the fees in there because we wanted to go ahead and get ahead of the curve and have them built into the fee schedule so that when it is built and we're able to start renting, we can go ahead and we already have our prices, right? But just want to make you aware of those two things.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second.
Yeah, we have it already.
Yeah, I
I'm sorry.
have a motion and a second. Was there further discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item is, and I hope you don't mind me just trying to move us along. I want
That's your job.
to make sure that we put that on another time. Next item is update on gas system operations plan.
So for this, we have Scott Dixon. John's
Okay.
not here today, but he's out, I think. So where we are, we had approached another utility similar to CPS, Gray Forest Utilities. They are a very small town, but they have a very, very large gas utility, and nowhere near CPS's size, but significantly large enough to be able to do something like what we were proposing. We had reached out to them. They showed some interest in coming out and basically operating our gas system. Unfortunately, we just could not come to terms on the cost. The cost that they had proposed, just the base cost. So this was the base cost we'd pay every month, regardless if anybody showed up or not. There would be some base services that would include that, but if someone did show up to do some work, there'd be an additional charge. That base cost was more than double what my budget for the operations was. So we have budgeted $228,000 a year for operations for this aspect of the gas operations, and staff is now kind of punted to Plan B. There's a Plan A, B, and C. Plan B will be a mixture of B and C. So B is to cobble together several different services. So a group that would be able to help us with the Railroad Commission's reporting requirements, a group that would be able to help us with the weekly, daily, monthly, annual inspections that are required to just like we have our water system. We have to go check the pumps and the well sites, et cetera, every day in some cases, lift stations for the sewer system. There are similar requirements for the gas system where those types of checks have to be done on a regular basis. So we would outsource that and then outsource to get maybe another group or groups to do break fix and that kind of thing. In the various conversations we've had, so we've been preparing for this potential outcome. We started these conversations 4 months ago with various contractors, et cetera. We did not issue an RFP, but we do have an interlocal with CPS through our contract that I believe we can leverage to allow us to, at a minimum, start utilizing the contractors that they were using for our service. So they had a number of contractors that were basically as part of our contract with them. So I think we're going to back into it in that manner until we can issue our own RFP and seek additional providers at that point. But I think at this stage, it's kind of what I said earlier. I don't have a super. I'm not super confident in the budget that we have, but I feel reasonably good that we'll be able to stay within that $228,000 budget. We won't know until we go through the year. Now, separate and apart from that is the item that you funded this evening on consent, and that was the emergency. I call them emergency repairs to the DIMP. This is the 8% replacement. It was roughly $94,000 when we did it at the beginning of the year, and CPS wanted, I think in part because of their role in helping us resolve that and develop the plan and report to the Railroad Commission, they wanted to be able to leave us in good shape having done that work. And so they are going to get that work done by the end of September, by the end of this month, before the contract expires. They will make those DIMP plan improvements. This is the state required improvements to that roughly, I can't remember if it was 40% or 60% of our system that's considered super old, for lack of a more correct term. That's the update on the gas system. That's where we're at. We know that we have till the end of the month, so the next council meeting, you can anticipate potentially some gas-related contracts and other things that we're moving forward. These would be subcontractors that we're going to work with to either do the Railroad Commission stuff that I mentioned or different aspects. But we're anticipating having at least 3 main contractors that will do different aspects of our gas system. Now, the plan C that I alluded to is training up our own staff to do this work. It takes up to 2 years, as you saw in your council agenda packet, to have a person fully certified and trained up. So that's going to take some time. It just doesn't happen overnight. And you have to have someone that's qualified. So the folks, we're going to have to outsource to someone who is qualified to do certain aspects of this work where that is required. In the meantime, we'll be training up our folks to be able to do that at the end of whatever it is, 9 months or 2 years, depending on how long it takes.
Great. Any questions on that? All right. Thanks. I appreciate you keeping us up to date on that. All right. Next item is consider and take appropriate action on adopting an ordinance regulating the operations of golf carts on public streets and providing for a permit and registration process. This we have Chief Kohler.
Good evening. We've been working on this several times. We've had some discussions on it and everything else. I worked with the city attorney, and what's proposed to you is the ordinance, and talking to the mayor also, is we didn't want this thing to really be an expense. We just want to cover our operating cost of how we're going to roll this out. I think it would help us identifying those people that are driving these golf carts or the vehicles that are listed in here, and also know that they actually hopefully read the rules and regulations. Can lead them to water, but we can't make them read. Hopefully they will follow those guidelines that we put out there. And I think that I think it's a fair ordinance that basically goes with the state law and everything else that we have in there. There's nothing that we're overreaching here, in my opinion. But I know we've talked about it several times. If anybody has any questions as far as that goes.
Anybody have any questions so far? I've got a couple of them. So you have additional requirements for golf carts powered by gasoline. So where did these requirements come from?
Which ones you looking at, Mayor?
Section 3, additional requirements for golf carts powered by gasoline.
That's under state law. Correct.
These are all included in state law?
Yes. There is like a muffler and everything else that is required, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure. I thought I read that, but.
So can I just want a clarification there. Is state law allows us to pass those regulations, or state law establishes those regulations and we're just repeating them?
We're just repeating them.
Okay.
And so here's the difference between the two, especially for enforcement, is under state law, there is no permit or registration requirement, so you don't know, what the or why is driving within the city. But if you want to register, you want to charge for a permit so you can track persons that have golf carts, you must have your own local program of that, which is why you adopt local ordinances that mimic state law. Right? So the idea here is that, it's easier to educate people to a permitting process where you can educate them of all the requirements of the regulations for the actual golf cart itself, the insurance requirements, that you have to be licensed drivers, and all those sorts of things. So in case anybody ever wondered, why is it we adopt the same thing by local ordinance that exists in state? Do you want to permit it? Do you want to have an education program?
This is just an observation. I'm kind of looking for clarification. I only found out today. I don't know where I've been, but I didn't see it on the news or anything else. Apparently, our vehicle registrations are going away in 5 months or something like that. Like
Correct.
Inspections.
Inspection.
Inspections go away effective 1 January.
Right.
Correct.
So my question is,
They have to be tagged.
right. So you still have to go through the registration process,
Oh, yeah.
which is
You still get
online.
paid.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, still paid the fee.
All right. I guess that's where I was. I can see someone maybe a constituent coming to you later and going, oh, wait a minute. I don't even have to inspect my car every year anymore, but you want me to inspect my golf cart every 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
But if we still have to register them through the state, this is a registration process, not necessarily an inspection process. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because it does mention I'm looking on page 5 of the proposed ordinance under
Section 6, subsection F.
F, yeah. Under 2, it says re-inspection if a cart fails the initial inspection. So it does, even though it says it's registration, it looks like it includes inspection and decal. So I am putting out some information. Y'all are the policymakers. I want to make that very clear. I'm not trying to make policy. I just wanted to point out.
So the question that you're asking is, I think the way what you're saying here is that we would verify that everything meets the requirements when they first register. They would have to bring it in. Who would do that inspection?
The police department would do that inspection. I think we talked about registration being done at City Hall, but it really doesn't matter if we do it at City Hall or here.
Okay.
The police department.
And basically, I'm sure the inspection it's going to be what is required to be operating: 2 headlamps, 2 taillights, side reflectors.
Correct.
Right. The rear view mirror. Right. And the smoking vehicle. Yeah, that's what they're going to be looking for. It's not testing their exhaust system. Right. Like that.
And if they are driving at the speed limit that is posted under 35 miles an hour, because that's one of the requirements, does it still need the slow moving decal?
I believe so. Yes.
In the law.
It's in the law.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
I think some of the inspections is probably going to be on like the muffler and stuff like that, on those gas vehicles and stuff like that. Some of those can be probably.
I think this is really good clarification on this, honestly, because we've pretty much stopped driving ours except for like right around our property because I didn't know what the rules were. It wasn't clear to me what the rules were. So I think it's very nice having the clarity of this. Councilman Mers, you had a question or a comment?
I had a question. So at the beginning, it specifically excludes a number of things, including four-wheelers and neighborhood electric vehicles. What'll be the situation with those? Is that because those things are just not allowed on city streets, or because some of them are not allowed to be regulated under state law?
You talking about all-terrain vehicles? Which one?
Gator is Polaris.
Oh,
I think it calls that Gator, doesn't it? Gators and Polaris.
So it says, yeah, ATVs, four-wheelers, mules, gators, neighborhood electric vehicles, and design-altered golf carts are excluded.
I think that what we would want to do, because
So I guess
basically,
just
Right, so.
what's the-
And those things under state law have a different definition, so they don't fall under the state law definition for golf carts.
Okay.
So we're authorized under state law to regulate golf carts, we're not authorized under state law to regulate these other items. And those other items are also not, designed for.
Streets.
Public ways.
Okay.
okay, so if somebody has an electric or a gas-powered
Polaris.
lawnmower, yeah.
I've seen that one, sir.
Yeah,
I've
like
seen
my
that
vehicle.
one.
So my vehicle, it goes, I think 35 miles an hour, picked it up over at Tractor Supply. But it is not a golf cart. It's a small vehicle.
ATV.
So is that excluded from that and we could not drive that on public streets?
That is correct.
Okay.
So Polarises and Gators and all these things that we see driving on the streets and everything, they're not allowed on the streets by state law.
By state law, they are not designed for the public roadways. Now, there are exceptions. It says, if you have to drive the public street to cross over from there to there, right?
Right.
So there are exceptions built in, but they are not designed to be for you to be riding around on public streets. You're using it as a vehicle.
So what if somebody has a Prius? It's about the same size as my vehicle.
But they're inspected.
Right.
They're street-
Not anymore.
They're street legal.
So if you have a gas-powered street legal vehicle, it has blinkers, it has seat belts, it has all of the requirements, lights, turn signals, everything, then is that still considered one of these items, or is that considered a small vehicle?
That is beyond my immediate reach, Mayor, of what I recall the statute.
It has to be registered as a vehicle.
Well, so whatever
Right.
you're driving on the public roadways has to meet all the public roadway requirements and equipment.
Seat belts, you have to wear seat
So
belts.
that means if you believe it were something that were worthy of being on the road, or be legal to be on the road, then it should have a license plate inspection and
Registration.
it would have everything that, yeah.
I don't have that definition of motor vehicle in front of me, but if that's meeting the criteria there, then yes.
Okay, so I think we need to make that clear in here because I'm not the only one that has one of these. So let's make, what's that?
A lot of people.
A lot of people, right. So if we pass this and exclude those immediately, we're going to cause ourselves problems.
So are we going to table this until that gets clarified, or?
Well, I think that we need to clarify this and include verbiage about street legal vehicles.
We shouldn't be doing that.
This is, but yeah, this
That's
ordinance, I want to clarify though, I let Cindy weigh in, but this ordinance was specifically to figure out what you can and can't regulate. And what I think the attorney and the chief have come forward with is, here's what you can regulate, and that's golf carts. And it's not any of these other things. And so even if people already have those, state law doesn't allow you to do anything about it anyway. I don't know what additional clarity you could provide in this other than what it says, which is they're excluded because you aren't allowed to do anything with them. The general law of the city isn't allowed to regulate it anyway.
Well, I guess the clarification to our citizens is, by the way, these Polarises that you're driving around and everything, that Bernard was driving around, Bernard's vehicle, that by state law, you cannot drive those on our streets. I mean, and we can't ignore state law.
Unless there's some aspect in the law that says you can, if they're registered and licensed and inspected, and they've got lights and they've got turn signals and they've got seat belts and they've got all those other things that meet whatever the state law says. And we don't, I think what you heard us say is we don't know that aspect of it. We were asked to look into specifically what can you regulate, but you can regulate this stuff. So we aren't at a point tonight where you can go and tell your neighbor, hey, you can't drive down the street. The fact is you might be able to if he makes the proper upgrades and then goes and licenses it with the state. But We don't know that for sure.
But this ordinance is complete. It could be voted on tonight as a golf
Right,
cart.
because this is all you can do. That's all I was gonna say. This is all you can do. So it's kind of like calling up. Good or don't do it. Am I mean, was that stating?
No, I think we're good, and actually, I'm trying to read through my quick guidance here. Yeah, there are different set of transportation code regulations for off-highway vehicles. Generally, those things that we're talking about,
I would recommend that if we do this, we should provide instructions for both. I would recommend tabling this until we get some sort of verbiage together, because I would like to make an announcement so that people understand exactly what that is. If you make two separate ones, it's going to confuse people. If you make one unified, this is what is acceptable, this is what is not, and that could be in the newsletter, that could be, covered in the newspaper, however we want to do that. I think that would be the most prudent way to do this for a solid unified message.
And then make sure we point out for the ATVs and all that, per state law.
Yes.
It is not Castroville, it is the entire state that says this.
Right. Okay.
I have two more comments,
Yes,
but
please.
I'm just going to say the serious one.
Oh, come on.
I am not in favor of Section 6, which requires the registration permit and the city inspection. We do not require operators of other motor vehicles to pay a fee to the city or register with the city. And I would rather have people driving golf carts through my neighborhood than driving lifted pickups and Ford Expeditions. Golf carts are smaller, they are lighter, they are slower, and they provide much better situational awareness to the person driving them, which means they are far less of a threat to walkers, me, bikers, me, and children, my children. Thank you.
Sorry.
I don't feel that we should be putting extra paperwork and fees in the way of people using vehicles that present less threat to other users of the road.
I would counter that with the reason that I thought it was prudent to do this is because we have a lot of people that don't know what the rules are. And the best way to make sure that they understand those rules is to pass something like this. So every micromodal.
Children have been driving these.
Exactly.
That was the big force, is the kids are driving them all around and they don't.
And there are many different things. Like myself, I'm a violator because I didn't know what the rules were. And so it is really good to get those rules out. But if there's a micromodal vehicle, I'll just compress them into micromodal, then it either has a state registration, a license plate, or it has the Castroville license plate, which I think could be really kind of cool by doing something like that. And I think it would actually encourage people to do that. And you would make sure that anybody that had that had received the rules and understood what they were. Anything that's missing a Castroville license plate for an approved golf cart or a state license plate for something else would be pulled over by the cops, and they would explain to them the situation to help them rectify it. And so it's encouraging people to understand exactly what they can do and give us some enforceability behind that. Not saying we want to pull everybody over and give them a ticket, but pull them over and give them an explanation of how do you do this right? How do you do this safely? I think that is more of a positive thing. Plus, if we do cool looking license plates, say Castroville, and allow people some level of personalization, I think it's kind of cool. I think by doing that registration, which you've got to cover the cost of, I think that doing that registration actually would encourage people to do that.
Yeah, and if I may briefly respond to that, you can also just pull people over and tell them the rules. If they're breaking the rules.
Cool little Castroville license plate.
Yeah. You can sell those in the gift shop, but you don't need an additional process in order to pull the people over. If someone's breaking the rules, you can just pull them over, tell them what the rules are, and if they've done it before, give them the same fine that state law requires.
Right.
I guess just counter David. David, I agree with what you say, but in one respect, this is different. These are not registered by the state, and somebody has to verify that they do have the minimum criteria, and that's going to be an inspection before the police department, and there is a cost associated with that. And so we're just offsetting the cost of that. I'm going to say I think less than 5% of the vehicles out there are actually golf carts. I think the vast majority of them wouldn't even be covered by this ordinance. But
All right, anything else? Okay, so this, are you okay with tabling this? We'll come back with one unified message. Is that all right?
Yes.
Amen.
Definitely.
All right,
good work, by
perfect.
the way.
Because Herb wants to go home.
We need to broaden the scope of the ordinance to include all the vehicles that are on our roads.
Or two separate ones.
Well, that's,
This is recycled paper, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
More expensive.
it's like the-
Oh, hold on one second. Actually,
Maybe
hold on,
it's
I've got
this-
to, Chief, I've got to open up this next item.
Okay.
So the next item is update on traffic study on Lower Lacoste Road.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry about that.
That's what the recycle.
I'm trying to get out of here too, so.
Move it along, that's good.
Talking to Council members, wanted to talk about the speed study stuff that we had done. Here it's got the month of 6/12, 6/22, 8/17, 8/23, and 8/30. I do have all the backup graphs if you need them, but I thought it was pretty interesting. The fluctuates a little bit, but I think in the very end, I think we're getting a lot more compliance with what's going on. We did have a patrol meeting sometime. I don't remember when that was, but we were discussing when we sent out these surveys, just for the officers to start looking at them to see the peak times and everything else. I think that has helped with the looking at it from the standpoint of when is the speeders happening, when something's happening. Lower Lacrosse Road, I looked at it. I think we wrote somewhere in the neighborhood of 21, 22 citations in the month of August. 9 of those were for speeding, stop signs, inspections. I think one of them was a window tint, but most of it was the stop sign and the speeding on that roadway. So hopefully we'll continue to monitor that. I think it shows positive results. Probably need to start doing this kind of comparison with other streets that we've done it on second time, third time, to see if we can't see any type of stuff. But my hat's off to the officers that really took it upon themselves to take it out there and start that enforcement when we've had those issues in those areas.
Councilman King.
Would you describe, explain what the word moderately, how many miles over the speed limit is moderately, and how many over is excessive?
Typically that's 10 over or 10 under, 9 under.
So 9 is moderately?
Yes, sir. And then once you hit the 10, that's the threshold there.
10 is excessive.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is that miles per hour or percentage?
Yes, sir. Miles per hour.
And on your below speed limit, did you also, were you clocking people walking and riding bicycles?
That's pretty slow, correct? Some of that's where they pull out too.
Surprised me.
Right.
All right. Anybody else?
Very good.
thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this and thank you for putting in so much work and focus on that road. You helped make it safer.
The officers have done a great job, sir. They really have.
It's the whole, yeah, thank you for your people.
I think it's really good looking at these areas. We continue to have people wanting to put up more and more stop signs, and I really don't feel like they're more of a burden than they are a benefit. Because if they're not going to follow the sign that has the numbers on it, they're not going to follow the sign that has the stop on it.
Yes, sir.
But some of the ones that we've had issues with, Constantinople, Gentiles, Houston, Geneva, Washington, some of those where we have the long straightaways, I think it's really good to continue to monitor those. So I appreciate the beginning on Lower Lacoste. That's really good.
Yes, sir. Thank
All
you.
right. Anybody else? Great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next item is review application submitted for open city board and commission positions. For this we have Secretary Deborah Howe.
Yes. Well, we don't have anybody here tonight, looks like.
Priscilla.
Well, Priscilla's here, the old, she's not up for reappointment.
Oh, the new
We had 3, well,
the old what?
stop. Okay, we had 3 applicants that are asking to be reappointed on the full board. That was Kyle McVeigh, which was here. Jeff Gardner did write back to me. He could not attend, but he did. I can read off his credentials. Everybody knows him. He was former mayor, resident of the city from 2005. retired attorney, was in the Air Force. Of course, you know his credentials. So he sent that over to me. I reached out to the new board members. Bless her heart, Mary was here.
Well, you had Doug Domino also, right?
Doug Domino, I do have his application. I didn't see him.
He wasn't, but he called. And
Okay.
Same thing with Jeff Garner. Everybody knows him. And
All of them for the full board. We have two new
Doug Domino.
We have two new
Not
applicants.
Doug Domino, Doug Domino.
That's on record. I'm going to kill you. Let me just get through. Now, on the HLC, there is two new applicants. One is Mary King and also Lori Marchman. She's not here tonight. Ms. Marchman, they are in Oregon, I believe, on a trip. Now,
was here.
but Mary was, that's a different one. She was here.
You had to go home for the debates.
We have 3 full board positions and 1 alternate position open. Once y'all choose who you want back on the board or who you're appointing, the Maloneys are, I believe, still wishing to possibly change to alternate position. I do have 1 alternate that doesn't want to move up to the board. So it may be that one of those 2 would go to an alternate position. It's a whole different thing. But also we have other applicants, and I can't pronounce his last name, I'm sorry. His name is Chris Kuchenbrod. He wants to be on the library board. They do have an open position on that. And we also have Steve Dauphin. I'm trying to think. I don't think I had a response from him because I did send out to ask to see if they could come in. Chris did send me back an email, and he was unable to attend. He'd like to be on the board. He would like to see the potential it has for the future. He happens to be, after reading this, the new director's son. So he said he wanted to make that clear that he is her son. He grew up in a local library as often as I could. He was homeschooled in a very small town and community. He sees Castroville. It reminds him of how he grew up and his possibilities. He holds several. He has a few certificates in process improvement, Six Sigma Green Belt, and project management professionalism.
I knew that one.
Oh, yeah, know that one well.
He says, I believe my background in process improvement, along with my in-depth understanding of new technology, he could help advise on the technology implementation, and he would help advise on new processes and inefficiencies. Now, he's asking to be on the library board. And like I said, the other gentleman, he would like to be on the parks. In your packets, I have put down what positions are open on each board. The park does have, which they'll come back next month. The next meeting is when you vote on these. I can reach out and see if they can come possibly to the next meeting, to where if you want to meet the gentleman for this, and also I don't know, Steve Dauphin, to see if they could come and attend, and maybe you could put a name and a face together.
Okay.
But otherwise, that's the 3 boards we have right now that is submitted.
All right, next time we do this, let's encourage them to come in the first one.
Right.
And
I do.
I didn't notice it. We should have put this at the very beginning.
You want any motions tonight?
No, this was
No.
just for review strictly.
This is just for review.
And I did, and that's why they sent me back. I said, if you can't come, if you can send me a resume to where, that y'all encourage me to come. So I'll see if I can get them.
Yeah, if we could, and that was one of the problems with a lot of them, was that at the very end, and they were going to stick around for 3 hours. But you're
Right. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't recognize that. So, all right. Next item is executive session. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, entitled Consultation with Attorney, and Texas Government Code, Section 551.085, entitled Deliberations Regarding Economic Development Negotiations, the City Council may convene in executive session to receive advice from the City Attorney regarding the following. The item is Flat Creek Utility Service Agreement. We're going into executive session at 8:38.
By the way, I learned 2 things tonight. One is when you pull in on umbrella into our parking lot, you're supposed to turn it. If you see the law, you're gonna turn, that's also violation.
They didn't hurt you.
I did not know either of those. I was educated.
Because Priscilla and I had a discussion on that because she said I feel upset.
All right.
What do you do with the flyer? Go back, take it back to the store, and you ask them to put it in a box that shows what's on it.
Oh, did he get stopped? All right.
See, I think that would have been fun.
I make sure to take my Cheetos if you didn't.
But not your priority. You have your priorities
I do
straight.
indeed. I do indeed.
Nothing wrong with that.
My Cheetos.
Oh, that was hilarious.
See, the problem is that I already watched them debate 4 years ago.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've needed both of them totally gone down since. So,
Yes, Thursday, noon.
Make sure.
And it's really basically reviewing the bylaws and stuff.
Okay. They haven't sent us, you know.
Yeah, Scott sent out the bylaws. You could review
Okay,
it
I'll
and
look
we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Print them off.
And I'll have you a hard copy if you just want. It's up to you, but I'll try to.
But the date.
Or join.
Oh.
Hillary, happy birthday.
120 flights of stairs for her birthday
Where?
at the Tower of America.
Let's take her.
You know, they do have an elevator. I know. It's for, oh,
We'll be at treatment tomorrow, so
I know a few
Everybody be
firefighters
watching
that
that.
do that in full gear every year, so.
yeah.
Oh, it's fine tomorrow.
they
Yeah.
should be. Yeah, they'll be up there. They do that.
That day, oh my God.
Yep, I remember that.
my younger brother's birthday is tomorrow, and one cousin's.
I was on active duty.
Only one.
My former city secretary's birthday. Injury leave.
And my family was celebrating a first birthday when.
I had to come to your C7.
All right, tell me when you're ready, Deborah.
I'm ready.
All right, we are returning from executive session at 8:53. No action resulting of posted and legally discussed in executive sessions. We'll move past that one. Next thing, discussion on future agenda items. Have we missed anything that is on there that we have not addressed? Okay. All right. Please make sure that you update it if you need to. And do take a look at the things that we're putting on there.
Yeah, go ahead. Bill's gonna.
I'm going to miss the next council meeting,
Right.
So is her.
and so is her.
I'm missing the next two.
Yes.
So I'm only missing one.
We have
so-
nothing that needs a super majority during that time?
No, but I think Bill had something.
Okay, in the following meeting, I will bring something to you. It'll be a council item, but it has to do with putting in a larger water line along Paris Street between Hill Road and,
Do you remember what the estimate was? Was it 30 grand or 50 grand?
it was about 47 grand or
Yeah, so
something.
$50,000.
$50,000. to re-
The two fire
Water.
on Paris Street.
Yeah, it's the next one to the east. Fire sprinkler system. And we need a bigger water line.
So it'll loop our system and it'll help out the Beery House
Yeah.
project.
Okay.
All right.
So you're
Make sure
bringing
you-
that.
Morning, I'll put that together.
All right. And you get it on the pending agenda list?
I'll put it on the pending agenda list.
Because otherwise we might miss it. You got to do it.
I'd like to add a agenda item for one of the future meetings to get a schedule for the Athens neighborhood internal work on flood control. I'd like to see.
I don't have one yet.
Hey, we got 2 meetings to put together. There you go.
You got a few weeks.
All right.
Try.
Put it on the and then
I have a
start
meeting tomorrow. I'll get it updated. No, Thursday.
All right. Anything else? Then we are through our agenda and adjourned at 8:56.
Thank you all. Good job.
Well
Going
done.
to be at the chamber thing tomorrow? I'm supposed to be there.